Multiple severe thunderstorm warnings and even a couple of tornado warnings to tell you about now across portions of central and southern South Dakota. This is just the beginning stages of these severe storms we've been tracking that are still expected to merge into a line and race their way off to the east. So here's what we have in store right now on First Alert Live Doppler radar. We're looking at multiple storms moving on through right now in the central portions of the state. Taking a bit of a closer look, we're going to dive into some of these warnings. This is now a confirmed tornado in portions of now Brule, Charles Mix, and Gregory County. And what's pretty impressive about this is you can start to see a little bit of that hook developing. And that's also why you're noticing this purple box here. That's a tornado warning indicating that it is confirmed. And actually kind of looking at one of the storm spotter videos right now that's live in this vicinity, there is a tornado on the ground. So you definitely want to make sure that you are seeking shelter if you are in this warning. And this is where the tornado would be at right now, just along Highway 44 as a matter of fact. So it's moving off to the south and east. Let's get some more details on that particular storm as it does continue to make its way off to the south and east. It is, here we go, let's get some information on that. It is moving southeast at about 35 miles an hour. So if you've been watching throughout the newscast tonight, you've noticed that that storm started out and it was only moving around 10 miles an hour, but now it's moving even quicker. It accelerated quite a bit, and that's going to be kind of the nature of these storms for tonight. We're also looking at 2-inch in diameter hail. That's going to be another big time concern with this, but this has been confirmed. This was along Highway 44 near Dixon. This is where the tornado has been spotted. As I'm looking at storm chaser footage of this, I can confirm there is one on the ground in this area. So you certainly want to take this very seriously and make sure you are seeking shelter. We're going to look at this cell. I'm going to look at the velocity scan on this, and that is some pretty impressive rotation within this cell, that coupler right there that we're looking at. This is crossing Highway 44 right now as it's making its way off to the south and east. In addition, we have another tornado warning to tell you about as well. This goes until 5:15 for portions of Hand, Hughes, and Hyde County. This is radar indicated right now, but you're kind of noticing the structure here. This is what I'm concerned about, that we could get some an actual touchdown to occur, because there's a pretty good little structure showing up right here, almost a bit of a little hook echo trying to develop as well. In addition, some very, very large hail in this area has been reported. Same situation, 2-inch in diameter hail with that one. Here's what that looks like on velocity, and that's equally as impressive as the one that's off to the south of this cell. So we're looking at that taking place right now. Let's highlight the hail for a moment too. This is Doppler radar estimates at the moment, but very impressive, upwards of 2 to 3 inches in diameter so far with this particular cell. Let's go back now to the one that does have the active tornado on the ground with this. It's moving southeast at about 35 miles an hour for portions of Brule, Charles Mix, and Gregory County. Very impressive signature right now on radar. And this is what we're looking at right here. This is where, if you're in this vicinity especially, that's where that tornado is currently on the ground. And even just looking at some of the footage right now, it is very, very impressive. Large tornado is on the ground in this area, and it's moving very quickly now. And this is going to be something that is going to be kind of the nature of these storms tonight as they continue to make their way into the eastern parts of the area. Now, the tornado threat is going to be something that we see early on in the night, because it does look like as we get later into this evening, this will shift into a more of a wind threat. But that's still, you know, we're talking about 80 to 100 mile an hour wind gusts, nothing to mess with. So just to kind of go over some updates with this, again, we have a tornado on the ground with this particular storm. It is confirmed, it's observed. I'm currently watching it right now on one of the storm chaser streams. So this is moving off to the south and east at about 35 miles an hour. And this is in portions of Gregory County, the northwestern corner of it, as it's making its way to the south and east. You saw that severe thunderstorm warning flash there for a moment. Let's get an update on that. Still looking at 2-inch in diameter hail being the main threat. I think what they did was they just took out a couple of counties out of that. Yeah. So as of literally a few seconds ago, still looking at 2-inch in diameter hail with this cell too. So it's not even just the tornado threat that we're seeing kind of in the middle of this, but it's that hail threat that's on the northern edge too, that's going to be moving on through and impacting portions of northern Gregory County. We do have, again, I want to show this quickly too, we do have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect in the eastern portions of the area until 10 o'clock for tonight. So this is something we're going to continue to monitor very, very carefully as the night goes on. And even just looking at First Alert Live Doppler radar, multiple warnings are in effect right now. And we're looking at even a brand new tornado warning that just got issued in portions of Todd County. So I'm going to go to that quickly too and check out some of the stats on this one. Looks to be right now, looks to be radar indicated for the time being, but let's get some details on that as it's making its way to the south and east. And I'm going to pause it for a moment because, again, what I'm going to draw your attention to would be right in this area right here. That's where we would get some rotation to take place and a potential tornado too. This is in effect until 5:30, and this is 12 miles north of Valentine, moving east at about 30 miles an hour. So we're seeing that taking place right now. In addition to that, golf ball size hail is a big time threat in Todd County. So that's a tornado warning update for Todd County. Let's get back to this one. And I'm going to move radar just a little bit to give you a better angle of this too. Moving off to the south and east, tornado is on the ground right now. It's kind of it's kind of cycling in a way where it looked pretty intense there for a while. It's thinning out a little bit more now, nonetheless still on the ground. So again, something to take very, very seriously as it's making its way off to the south and east. This is still impacting portions of rural Charles Mix and mostly northern Gregory County right now as it makes its way to the south and east. Pretty impressive structure too with that tornado that's moving on through. It's kind of thinning out a little bit as well. Here's the latest velocity scan on that as it continues to make its way into more of portions of northeastern Gregory County now. And this is what we'll be looking at right here. That's where that tornado is, and that's the latest scan that just came in too. So that's, again, showing that it's still intact a little bit more. It's kind of thinning out just a bit too. And so we're seeing that on one of the storm chaser footage right now. Looking a little bit further off to the north, I'm just going to be kind of going through some of these warnings with you guys to kind of just because there's so many to go over. We'll kind of just highlight the tornado warnings right now. We have 3 of those in effect. This one's still in effect until 5:15 for portions of Hand, Hughes, and Hyde counties. And as we look at the velocity scan on that, that it is kind of a bit of a mess, obviously, right? But we're looking at right in this area right here as there being some kind of broad area of rotation, and this is what we're monitoring too. And a little update on that actually just kind of came in, so we're going to take a gander at that. I'll put the radar back into motion on that cell so you can see that just to give an update. But the latest on this storm is still until 5:15, and we're looking at $0.5 size hail. Still capable of producing a tornado as it's moving. It's about 17 miles southeast of the Blunt area, and this storm now is picking up speed. Now it's moving at about 45 miles an hour, even faster yet. And this is just going to be kind of what we end up seeing with most of these storms for tonight as they make their way further off to the east. I wanted to check on the hail too, and I mean, that is very impressive with this hail core that just kind of came in with our hail estimator here. 2.5 to 3 inches in diameter. So that is approaching baseball size hail with that cell. So that is some very, very large hail that you certainly do not want to mess with. It's anywhere between about the size of an egg and the size of a baseball with that particular storm. Going back to talking about this cell, again, this is still in effect until 5 o'clock for tonight, tornado warning for portions of rural Charles Mix and Gregory counties. This has a confirmed tornado on the ground. It still is on the ground right now, although it does not look as impressive as what it did about 10 to 15 minutes ago. Still, though, this is going to be something where we continue to see the potential for more tornadic activity as we go into tonight. It looks like they took a little bit of that warning away for portions of northwestern Gregory County. So let's go back to that and take a look and see what we got with one of the updates on that. It is now moving southeast at about 30 miles an hour. It's 26 miles south of the Chamberlain area. It is still on the ground. It's near the intersection of Highway 44 and 47. So that's where that still is on the ground right now. And that is moving off to the southeast, and it's moving faster. So people that are out ahead of this storm and other storms too, these are going to be moving through very quickly for tonight. These started out moving very slowly, and they're going to be moving even faster as they make their way off to the east. So I'm going to go back and give you kind of the broad view now of First Alert Live Doppler radar, just to show you that these storms are slowly trying to merge into that line, which eventually will be moving into the eastern portions of the area. Multiple severe thunderstorm warnings remaining in effect right now. Let's kind of go over some of those too, because we want to make sure we're kind of covering all of those warnings to give you just the latest updates on everything that we can. The one to the north here, this one is weakening a little bit more, so we're not going to spend as much time on that. Still looking at that impressive signature on first alert live Doppler radar with this cell, but so far this is just Doppler radar indicated. But as we know, this is something that we could be seeing quickly spawning a tornado as the night goes on. Hail with this storm upwards of 2 to 3 inches in diameter. So again, we're getting closer to baseball size hail and 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts. This storm is moving off to the east at about 45 miles an hour. So this storm is already starting to race pretty quickly off to the east. A little bit further south, still monitoring that cell that has the confirmed tornado. The latest signature does show it though, that again, it's still, we have that tornado that's still on the ground. Not as impressive though. It's trying to weaken a little bit more as it's making its way southeast. We still do have some really good rotation, and this tornado has at least been on the ground now for about 10 to 15 minutes. Was pretty intense for a while, but it's trying to weaken a little bit more. Still some really good rotation, and keep in mind that this is moving into an area where there's some really good ingredients in place for more tornadic activity, and of course the enhancement of that damaging wind gust threat too. That's something we're watching too. Now, that's the latest scan on the velocity. We're going to look at this. So this is pretty impressive to see as well, because we're looking at velocity here, and these very bright shades of blue. This is indicating some really strong wind trying to develop out ahead of that main storm. So that's something that we're going to have to watch for the eastern parts of the area tonight too, as that damaging wind gust threat becomes more of an issue across the area. Still looking at that tornado warning to the north, and that's pretty impressive to see. I'm going to stop radar for a moment and kind of take a look at this cell right here. Looking at that kind of hook echo developing too, this is a little concerning, because this is arguably the bigger of the two supercells right now. This is the one that was producing the hail up to potentially the size of baseballs, and that's what's going on now as it's making its way further east. It is east of the Pier area. I do want to stress that. Another tornado warning, I'm just going to quickly go back over, because so far that is just Doppler radar indicated, and that even has a new severe thunderstorm warning update on that, is this cell for Todd County. It has golf ball size hail, 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts, and we're looking at that. I'm going to click on that tornado warning for you to get a little update on that too, to see what that's still radar indicated as of 4:39, so just about 10 minutes ago. The storm that's capable, at least to where the better rotation is about still 12 miles north of Valentine. It's moving east at 30 miles an hour, and we're still dealing with the potential for golf ball size hail. Moving off to the north and east now, still have that tornado warning in effect for portions of Brule, Charles Mix, and Gregory County. It is trying to weaken a little bit more now, which is good news, but we're still watching that one very carefully, as that has been a confirmed tornado. That's something that's been observed, of course, looking at some of the streamers that have been out there, the storm chasers, storm spotters. They've been watching that too. It looks like the National Weather Service is trying to issue a new tornado warning to the south of this one, which would be more so into Cherry County, into Nebraska. So we're not going to spend as much time on that, as that'll be out of our coverage area. This is developing, just in my opinion, a pretty impressive signature here on radar, because not only is there a potential tornado in here, so far it's just Doppler radar indicated, but we're looking at some very heavy rain, very tall storm, has the potential to produce that very large hail, which has been observed now, where we've had anywhere from upwards of egg-size hail to baseball-size hail in this particular storm. So all modes of severe weather, a big-time threat for tonight, and that's still a big-time concern that we are monitoring. I'm going to look at the velocity scan of that storm that we're looking at right now, and not as impressive at the moment, but still, I mean, that's something that, like I said, it doesn't take very long for these storms to kind of materialize a little bit and produce that tornado. We're in that prime time of day for that to occur. So we're seeing that right now. Looking at some of the latest updates on what's going on around the southern portions of that cell. So we're going to go back now to Gregory County, Charles Mix, and Brule counties. Looking like now that tornado is lifting a little bit more now. Still some really good rotation in place, but not as impressive as it was about 10 to 15 minutes ago. So that's something we're still going to watch. And that was a new, let's see, there's a new severe thunderstorm warning that was just added to this. I'm going to read you the details on that. That is still in effect until 5 o'clock for tonight. Okay, so not anything new there. Still $0.5 size hail with this storm moving off to the south and east. Okay, so this goes until 5 o'clock. That tornado is lifting more now, but as it does make its way to the south and east, it's still going to be moving into a very, very good environment for more tornadoes, at least in the short term, before we begin to see this merging more so into a line of storms. And we're going to be seeing that taking place as the night goes on. By the way, here's what that's going to look like. That is going to basically kind of look just like this, and then race off to the east as we go into this evening. So that's why we're going to be looking at that damaging wind gust threat being so concerning across the region later on tonight. So eastern South Dakota, just be on the lookout, because that is going to still attempt to merge and race its way off to the east. Going back and looking at that cell that's still got the tornado warning on it. Still some pretty impressive rotation on it. I'm looking at a couple of storm spotter videos right now, and the tornado has since lifted, but there was one on the ground for a good 15 minutes at least. And there for a moment, it was pretty large, but then now it's kind of it has since weakened a little bit more now, which is good. But there's still going to be that threat for tonight. Zooming out, looking a little bit further north, still looking at that one tornado warning in effect until 5:15 for portions of Hand, Hughes, and Hyde County. And then off to our south as well, still portions of Todd County, that radar indicated tornado until 5:30 for this evening. Looking a little bit further north, I'm just going to concentrate on the one lone storm right now that does have that observed tornado tag on that. It will be allowed to expire here in about 5 minutes or so, but that storm it's got a pretty impressive wall cloud on it, but right now not anything on the ground. Let's just take one quick look at the hail threat with the cell that's to the north of that one. And I'm gonna loop this so you can just see how intense that hail was for a while. Still is large with the latest scan, but not quite as bad as it was just about 10 to 15 minutes ago. Hail upwards of 2 inches in diameter, still nothing to mess with. That's about the size of an egg. So we're seeing that taking place right now, and still watching out for that one lone tornado warning that remains in effect until 5 o'clock for portions of Brule and Charles Mix and Gregory County. We're going to reset things, and we're going to go to break, and we are going to be back for the 5 o'clock newscast on KSFY. So stick around.
This is a First Alert weather update.
Well, hello everyone. I'm meteorologist Tyler Roney, being joined by meteorologist Lexi Murley. And Lexi, we have been watching some very intense storms developing across the area.
Yes, we do. It is looking like a potentially very dangerous situation is forming right now in central South Dakota. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of those, kind of that warn storm right now, Tyler.
Yeah, as we're looking at this new warn storm, this is actually, as we're looking at some of the storm chaser streams, we did have a tornado on the ground with this one as of the last couple of minutes or so. And this was something that we saw even earlier on this afternoon. We did have a tornado on the ground. Tornado warning still in effect until 5:30 for portions of Brule, Charles Mix, and Gregory counties. And the impressive thing too, Lexi, has really been the rotation on this storm.
I would definitely agree. Showing very strong signs of rotation, not out of the question. There potentially could be a tornado on the ground right now. We've been watching that on live streams within the last hour or so. Let's take a look at that velocity. You can kind of see right where that couplet is. It does look like it is just to the north and east of the Burke area right now. And this is generally traveling to the southeast over the next couple of hours. Now is the time to take cover if you are in places like Burke, the La Roche area, even around Platte, the Gettys area, potentially a very dangerous situation. We just got another scan in, and it does look like that is even intensifying a little bit. On another note, let's take a look at some of our hail in this storm. We are looking at this warning B for around tennis ball size hail. We're picking up 1.5 inches from this storm, and let's go ahead and take a look farther up to the north. Not technically warmed for that tornado warning, but just to the south of the Highmore area, we do still have this severe thunderstorm warning that is headed towards places like Como, the Laurel Brule area. There is a little bit of rotation in the storm, so be on the lookout for potentially a tornado to be forming within the next hour or so. Back to you, Tyler.
Lexi, the other thing that I'm looking at too is this other storm that's to the north of that one, and it's in effect until 5:45 for portions of Buffalo, Hand, Hyde, and Lyman County. And what's impressive about this is not only the potential for some rotation in this storm, but we're still looking at the threat of golf ball size hail as it's making its way off to the east very, very quickly. This is moving off at about 30 miles an hour, and so we're going to continue to see these storms really begin begin to intensify even more and even start to get a little bit faster as they make their way off to the east. Now I was just going to take a look at that latest velocity scan. I'm going to move back a little bit more and look at that storm that's off to the north. And again, looking at some rotation embedded within there. And this is something that's going to be, as it moves into some good ingredients, this is something where we could easily start to see a tornado forming. But right now, all eyes remain on, again, now as this warning has changed, Lexi, you see we do have now just in Charles Mix. Yeah, now it's a confirmed tornado warning until 5:30 for portions of Charles Mix and Gregory County.
Yeah, that's what that means with that purple box there. So that has been warned. That is now a confirmed tornado. If you are in just to the south of the La Roche, the Platte area, just around the Burke area, now is the time to take cover. There is a confirmed tornado on the ground. Make sure you're getting into shelter, whether that be a sturdy structure. That is the best conditions for where you need to be right now. Try to get in the lowest level of your home too.
This is interesting to see too, because this is also being warned for the threat of baseball-sized hail. So that was something to watch out for too. And some of the hail trackers, they've been, it's one of those things where they'll really pulse up quickly, these supercells, and then they'll weaken a little bit, but then they'll refire back up. And so we don't want to lose sight of the fact that the hail is still going to be a big threat tonight too. And we've already had some reports of 2 to 3 inch in diameter hail. But right now, this is where, going back to that tornado warning, I'm going to stop First Alert Live Doppler radar. This is where it would be at, would be right in here. And looking at some of the live streams right now, some of the storm chasers that are on this storm, again, we've had this actually on the ground. We've had reports of that. And this is the same one that's been, it had a tornado on the ground briefly, it lifted, and now as it continues to make its way southeast, as we've been preaching, it's going to move in to areas where there's really good ingredients. And that's actually a pretty good velocity scan right there, showing again where that tornado would be at, Lexi.
Yeah, that's definitely where the couplet you're seeing is. And I want to go back to the hail impacts from this. It's not super uncommon to see with some of these larger supercells that, as you were saying, Tyler, that baseball-sized hail. So not only is there a confirmed tornado on the ground, you could be dealing with very, very large hail along with that damaging wind gusts as well. Something to keep in mind too.
Yeah, and this is going to continue to make its way to the south and east at about 15 to upwards of 30 miles an hour. Continues to almost try to race a little bit further off to the south and east as it goes along. And that's why we're going to be kind of concerned for some other areas, further into Charles Mix County, the Lake Andes area, Wagner, start to kind of think about that a little bit. Latest scan on radar, it was actually kind of impressive too, because, we kind of lost a little bit of that hook, it looked like, but that velocity couplet still very much intact. And so this is where that tornado would be at. And it's just west of the Hamilton area. It's north and east of Burke. It's going to try to cross Highway 18 as it makes its way. I think it's going to kind of make its way further south and east, potentially even around the Bone Steel area, so something to be aware of in that vicinity. But otherwise, that's what we're going to be seeing with regard to that. And really quickly, I just wanted to kind of look around at some other warnings right now. Still wanted to highlight this one, severe thunderstorm warning until 5:45, Buffalo, Hand, Hyde, and Lyman counties. And further north, these warnings so far have just been for 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts and quarter-size hail. But even these northern edge storms are still, trying to show that pattern of forming a line and racing their way off to the south and east.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Once it starts to get more of that linear pattern, I wouldn't be surprised if they do really pick up in momentum, Tyler. So now, even if you are on the eastern half of the state, now is the time to be prepared. We're already seeing some very powerful storms here this evening. Let's go ahead and go back to our hail tracker too. Technically, these are only warned for really that quarter-size hail up to the north, as Tyler was mentioning there. But just to the south of the Highmore area, we are getting over 2-inch hail kind of estimates here on our radar. So that is something to keep in mind too. Along with that, of course, we are keeping a very close eye. Let's go ahead and take a look again at some of these velocity scans. Here's that same cell with that 2-inch estimated hail just to the south of the Highmore area. It does look like that rotation is weakening a little bit, but I can definitely still see a couple up there, Tyler. And taking a look farther down to our south, our confirmed tornado warning, it did look like potentially that hook echo was weakening just a little bit, but you can see it right here on our velocity scan. That is still showing some very, very strong rotation there.
And that's what we're very concerned about. This is probably the worst area, just because we're looking at in this vicinity, there's just the best ingredients for that tornadic activity. And that's something that we're going to see initially with these storms. And this is going to be kind of the threat still over about the next couple of hours before this is going to favor transitioning into more of a wind-driven threat. And that's still something you don't want to mess with. I mean, the threat is still there for 80 to 100 mile an hour wind gusts.
Right, that's exactly what we are more concerned of when these storms are going to be booking it eventually towards eastern portions of our viewing area. Tyler, do we have eyes on this storm? Do we have a live stream going up right now? Can you tell if maybe it's rain wrapped, or is it pretty clear, pretty visible to the naked eye there?
You know, right now though, where some of the spotters are on this cell right now that's in Charles, Mix, and Gregory counties, it's still trying to drop. You know, it looked a little rain wrap there for a moment, but it's almost kind of cycling a little bit more right now, and that's, you know, because it hasn't stayed on the ground consistently.
Right.
But again, this is going to be something that's just going to continue through the night. We're going to see a tornado, you know, form, and then it's going to lift and move south and east, and then that potential is there. And that kind of also goes along well with some of the latest scans on radar too. Not as impressive, which is good, you know,
Yes.
but still, that's just something to keep in mind. Some really impressive structure. Looking at some of these live streams right now, but otherwise, yeah, it's very much very heavy rain falling with this.
Yeah, very heavy rainfall. Mind you, we could still be dealing with some flooding issues with that heavy rainfall. You know, you kind of have everything with these supercellular storms. That does include that tornado, yes. We're kind of looking at this velocity coupler right now. Just to the north and the east of the Burke area, it is going to be heading in a southeasterly direction here over the next couple of minutes. So once again, we want to urge you, if you are in places like the Lake Andes area, that is heading your direction. If you're in Hamilton right now, that is right upon you. Make sure you're getting to the lowest level of your home and to the safest area that you can.
And one thing I wanted to go back and highlight really quick before we go back and talk about these warnings, I just kind of wanted to go over a little bit of a timeline of what we're going to be looking at for tonight. And as we look ahead to this evening on Futurecast, you can start to see that those storms, you know, this is something we've been talking about the last couple of days. A lot of the weather models having a really hard time kind of initializing what's going on in the environment, but we're looking at those storms, at least later on tonight, still favoring that linear pattern, kind of that bow echo pattern that would form and then race their way to the east. So that's why we're really talking about eastern South Dakota, even western Minnesota and Iowa. I know you're not technically under that thunderstorm watch right now, but we could easily see that get extended further east later on tonight, because that thunderstorm watch is in effect until 10 o'clock for this evening over eastern portions of the state.
Yeah, and you know, Tyler, I do think that is a very likely scenario that they would potentially extend that watch that we do have there. Just looking at that, it looks like we do have another tornado update.
Yeah, there we do. There it is right there. Now it's just in Gregory County, and it continues to make its way more of that southeasterly turn, and this goes until 5:45. And now, we just literally talked about this a couple of minutes ago, places like Bone Steel need to be on the lookout, because as that's making its way south and east and it continues to turn more in that direction, it is going to cross Highway 18 as it makes its way further to the south. So that's what we're seeing with that latest update. So we're probably going to be seeing that cell just to the north be allowed to expire a little early, and then have this be more focused on the southerly one.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And one thing about these watch boxes, you kind of notice that it's taking more of a southeasterly direction. It almost looks like that supercell, that very strong storm, is turning to the right, which is also, we call them right turners. That's pretty typical when you get some of these stronger supercells, just because the rotation is, again, so strong. And speaking of rotation, let's go ahead and take another look at the latest velocity scan at this. It does look like it has tightened up even a little bit. So very tight rotation just to, it looks like now, of the northeast of the Burke area right now. If you are in places like Bone Steel, this is heading your direction very quickly. You are just on the edge of that warning box. So now is the time to take cover, as this is moving and approaching your area very quickly here.
Yeah, it's going to move into Bone Steel at about 5:44, it looks like. Fairfax 5:50 as it's making its way to the south and east. And that's the biggest concern right now out of all of the storms that are going on across the region. I'm just going to look back on First Alert Live Doppler radar, because we do have some additional storms that we're monitoring. You know, we're looking at northeastern South Dakota. Not as good of ingredients in place in that direction, but as we look a little bit further to the south, obviously all eyes are drawn to this storm. And looking a little bit even further, you know, as this continues to make its way further south and east, I think Charles Mix County the most would be the next impacted, but for now it's going to really just impact portions of southern Gregory County, as it looks like it's going to eventually make its way into Nebraska. And Lexi, I see you're looking at some of the storm reports so far today.
Yes, and some of these are from yesterday because we have had pretty crazy weather around here, Tyler, as you well know. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of these storm reports. Even though some of these are only warned for around quarter-size hail, we are picking up a couple of reports. That hail report at 5:06, 1.5 inches of that hail for that diameter there. So it's a little bigger than quarter size. Be aware of that. A couple of other storm reports, of course, just to the north of the Gregory area at around 4:35. We did have that confirmed tornado on the ground. I'm watching for another tornado report to be dropped because potentially it does look like on our live stream here, it is looking like that is potentially impacting the ground. We have that warned, that confirmed tornado on the ground in south central South Dakota, Tyler.
Yeah, you know, and Lexi, right now, that is where our focus really is right now, is certainly on Gregory County, and that's where we still have that confirmed tornado. And this has been one of those scenarios where it has not stayed consistent, but we do have that threat continuing in terms of being able to produce a tornado, because we've already had a couple of this from this same supercell actually already produced tornadoes. So that's going to continue to make its way further south and east. And like I said earlier too, as it continues to turn more south and east, and at the rate it's going, it likely will be in Nebraska by the time we get to our 6 o'clock hour here coming up.
Yeah, I would expect this to even turn a little bit more to the right as we head over the next couple of hours. So some good news, it does look to be crossing over the border, but be aware of that still if you are in portions of Gregory County. Another look at our supercell here, it does look like that still is showing very strong rotation, Tyler.
Yeah, and you know, I'm still, our eyes are really glued on just that velocity scan as it continues to make its way to the south and east. And storm spotters still remaining on the storm, and the structure is still very, very impressive as it continues to make its way to the south and east. And it is going to be crossing Highway 18, and that's why we said a few moments ago too, keep an eye in the Bone Steel area, because that you're under the tornado warning, but that's where we're going to see that likely cross is going to be right over Highway 18 as it makes its way further south and east yet. Then it looks like with the rate it's going, it'll be in Nebraska shortly after that. And some additional storms, just to kind of go over a few of these quickly. Still a severe thunderstorm warning in effect for portions of Buffalo, Hand, Hyde, and Lyman County. Still some pretty impressive hail with that cell too. I was just going to grab a couple of details with that quickly, because this has been a pretty impressive storm too. Looking at still some rotation embedded within this storm, but right now the big threat is 2-inch in diameter hail, just one of the many threats that we are watching for tonight.
Yeah, most definitely. Right now, that is turning more into a large hail and a tornado risk. You can see there, Tyler, you have pulled up that hail tracker, some very large hail with some of these very discrete storms, some of these storms that are standing alone, taking up all the energy that's in the atmosphere right now and just feeding into them, kind of creating those big supercells.
Yeah, and that hail, I mean, that's something too that we already had earlier on, as that cell was making its way in. It was upwards of 2 to 3 inches in diameter, just based on Doppler radar estimates. So already that is incredibly impressive. And that is, so far, you know, we're looking at this being kind of the lone tornado warning that we are watching for at the moment, but some of those cells to the north could still produce some as well.
Yeah, we are still looking at some pretty strong rotation in this particular cell just to the north of the Chamberlain area, just south of Highmore, the Miller area. Pretty good rotation still on that storm. It does look like that supercell we are seeing with that ongoing tornado warning, that confirmed tornado warning, that is going to be moving into portions of northern Nebraska pretty quickly here, Tyler.
And Lexi, what we're going to do right now is we're going to kind of reset the table a little bit. We're still tracking this active tornado warning, the tornado that is on the ground. We are currently in our 5 o'clock newscast traditionally, but we are going to reset the table here, get us formally into the 5:30 newscast over on KDLT, but we will also be cutting in across our entire Dakota News Now family of stations with the latest on this storm. We will be right back with some additional updates on the storm. Stick around.
Dakota News Now begins with First Alert Weather.
Well, welcome back, everyone. I'm meteorologist Tyler Roney, being joined by meteorologist Lexi Murley. We continue to track some very strong and severe storms across our area.
Yeah, exactly. When I came in earlier on this morning, Tyler, I knew today was going to be a very big weather day, and it is panning out just like that.
It really is, Lexi. And, we're still looking at, as we come on the air for this 5:30 newscast, and of course, we're being joined on all the channels right now. We're looking at that tornado warning still in effect until 5:45, and we want to highlight the fact that this is in that purple box, indicating that this is still an observed tornado, and this storm has had a history of producing tornadoes so far over the last hour to hour and a half.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go ahead and pull up one of our velocity scans here. And as you notice, there is still some very strong velocity in this storm that was confirmed on the ground, located around 10 miles northeast of the Burke area, 30 miles west of the Lake Andes area, moving to the southeast around 20 miles per hour. So a pretty slow moving supercell here, but that just means we are looking at potentially that damage sitting over the same area. And it does still look like it's holding together pretty well, Tyler, here on our velocity scan. If you are in places like the Bone Steel area, this is heading in your direction pretty quickly here. Now is the time to take cover. You are just on the edge of that confirmed tornado warning.
Yeah, Lexi, the other thing is too, obviously as we look at it, kind of a broad view now of a First Alert Live Doppler radar, we have so many severe thunderstorm warnings that are in effect. And just kind of going over some of these in the northeastern parts of the region, a lot of these are for just some quarter-size hail, 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts, but this is just kind of the beginning. So we're going to kind of do a little bit of a tour of these warnings right now. Further off to the north, we're looking at some warnings in portions of northeastern South Dakota, of course, Emmons and Falk counties. Also, you're under a severe thunderstorm warning. But this cell, really, we've been watching in addition to the one that's in Gregory and Charles Mix counties, because this one was the one that earlier on produced baseball-sized hail. And the latest update on that, it remains in effect for another 12 minutes or so, but it does have some history of rotation, and it once did have a tornado warning on it. So even though there is no confirmed tornado on this warning or even anything radar indicated right now that stands out, that's still something to be very mindful of as it continues to make its way off to the south and east. And by the way, these storms are moving off to the southeast at about 20 miles an hour. Additional storms really quickly just to show you, looking at the one that's just to the west of the one that's got the tornado warning on it, that too dealing with some very large hail, kind of right along the Nebraska and South Dakota border. This is for golf ball size hail. That was just issued and it's in effect for an hour, but we'll go back to talking about that one tornado warning that remains in effect, Lexi.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look. I do believe we just had another velocity scan in. It's still looking like it is going to be holding together. It's moving generally around the southeast, around 20 miles per hour. So kind of a slower moving cell. And as you can see, that is going to be taking more of a right turn. That's something we typically see with some of these stronger supercells. That's indicating some of that very strong rotation. And you can see that here on our velocity scan. You can see you see that area of red here, that's traveling away from the radar. The green is going towards the radar. So that's how we are kind of indicating a lot of that rotation. A very powerful storm, very strong rotation on the cell, Tyler.
Yeah, looking at some of the storm spotters that are on this storm right now, I mean, the other thing to keep in mind is that there is some very intense rainfall with this too. And so, that's why we want to stress that if you, don't have any experience to go out there, don't go out there and try to take pictures or videos of this. But like you were just pointing out, Lexi, kind of looking at some of the latest scans on this, just north of the Burke area, there looks to be not any rotation per se, but already a really intense cell has just developed. It doesn't have rotation, but that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely something to keep in mind. And also, I want to point your direction farther a bit to the north on this other severe thunderstorm warning that we do have in the Chamberlain area. On velocity scan, it looks very messy, but one thing to note, this is coming from the Aberdeen radar. If you take a zoomed out look, I'll try to get it on the other radar here. We are seeing a little bit of rotation. You can kind of see that this is coming from the Sioux Falls radar now. Take a closer look at that. You can see where that is pointed just to the north of the Chamberlain area. And on top of that, we are looking at some very large hail with some of these storms. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these radar estimates. 1.7-inch hail, and that's just where I clicked on that same storm to the north of the Chamberlain, west of the Wessington Springs cell right now there, Tyler. So some very large hail as well.
Large hail associated with this, and we want to point out too that we do have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect until 10 o'clock tonight in the areas in blue, and that's why we're looking at there being that extended threat for severe weather for tonight. As a matter of fact, we're just going to kind of take a little bit of a break from coverage for a second, just kind of go over Futurecast here for tonight, and you'll start to see these storms continue to develop and intensify, race their way to the east. That's why we're still going to be on the lookout for what's going on in eastern South Dakota, western Minnesota, and Iowa later on tonight. That does clear out of here pretty quickly. You know, last night we had some severe weather move through the Sioux Falls area around 11:15 or so, and you know, it's going to be a little bit earlier than that for tonight, but it's still going to be an evening event nonetheless over the eastern parts of the area. And as we look at some of the storm spotter video too, we're looking at it. You know, again, it's a very impressive structure, but right now it is very difficult to see that tornado. That's why we want to stress not to go out there and try to find it yourself.
I would definitely agree. It does look like now we do have another tornado warning. It does look like Aurora, Brule, Gerald County just got issued this tornado warning. It's in the red, so that means it is radar indicated rotation, likely picking that up from what we were just looking at. Let's go ahead and pull up a couple of details here. Northwestern Aurora County in South Dakota, southwestern Gerald County, northern Brule County. That is going to be until 6:15 p.m. A severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was located right over the Etbauer Hill, 10 miles east of Fort Thompson, and that is kind of booking it, Tyler, moving to the south and east around 40 miles per hour right now.
Well, and certainly the other big problem with that storm, yet again, it's producing very large hail. This is a tornado warning, radar indicated, but also it is for the threat of 2-inch in diameter hail. And looking at some of the impressive scans too that we're seeing with the latest radar scan here, is that you're looking at a little bit of that hook trying to develop as well. It looks like as it's kind of crossing Highway 34, as a matter of fact, and you know, it'd be heading just off to the south and east. You know, around Crow Creek, for example, still be on the lookout. Wessington Springs, you're not technically in the warning, but you still want to be weather aware as it's going to be nearby. It is going to also cross Highway 45 as it makes its way to the south and east. And like you were looking at some of the velocity scans, I'm going to go back to that storm right now. This is what we kind of call a gap in radar coverage. It's kind of challenging to see truly what's going on with this storm, but we certainly can still pick out a little bit of that rotation that is occurring as that makes its way further to the south and east.
Yeah, most definitely. And even taking a look at some of these other just severe thunderstorm warnings, maybe even some weak rotation near the Freedom area. That's kind of just to the south of the Ipswich, if you're in places like the Aberdeen, kind of in your vicinity, and that is right by the radar right now, so we are picking up just a little bit of rotation over there. Looking to the northeast corner of the state, again, we still do have a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings. Let's go ahead and pull some of those up for you in places like the Richland area, Richland County, in that until 6 p.m. It does look like, try to pull up, Marshall and Roberts County, there we go. New Evington, Rosholton, the Veblen area, that is going to be warned for some sizable hail, some very strong wind gusts, maybe a bit of rotation even in some of these as well.
And what we're looking at too, you know, as we look at kind of a broad view now of First Alert Live Doppler radar, you can start to see how these storms are kind of slowly beginning to connect. And it looks like too, I'm gonna zoom back in here. They almost, what do they do here? They kind of issued another tornado warning within this.
For the more immediate future, I would assume.
Yes,
and this Buffalo County.
Yeah, it goes until 6:15, and so okay, so they're kind of trying to connect it as they're allowing that severe thunderstorm warning to expire. So this is going to just be to the east of the Chamberlain area, it looks like, but. You know, again, Chamberlain, you're close enough to that storm that it would not be a bad idea to get in your safe place, because that's something that's you don't want to mess with as it continues to make its way southeast too, because it is going to be moving through fairly quickly. Let's see, what did it say? The latest update shows that it's moving off to the east at 35 miles an hour. That's a pretty decent speed.
Yep. Also looking at this new tornado warning that we do have in, even just looking at the general reflectivity, Tyler, you can kind of see right where that hook echo is setting up right now. I'm not surprised they did issue this severe warning. You can see that hook echo just over the Buffalo County area. That, again, that tornado warning, not confirmed. This is technically still radar indicated, kind of in a radar hole right now. Let's go ahead and take another look at one of our velocity scans at this new warning here. It's being picked up by the Aberdeen radar just a little bit closer. Let's see if we can, it is picked up by the Sioux Falls radar. You can kind of see right where that velocity couplet is setting up, and this is more indicative of that general reflectivity pattern that we are seeing. That's kind of why we're seeing that hook echo, still very strong rotation. So again, even though this is just radar indicated, there could very soon potentially be a tornado on the ground there, Tyler.
Absolutely, Lexi. And I'm going to go back to the tornado warning that's in effect until 5:45 in Gregory County. Still technically what's called an observed tornado warning in the area in purple. But they just did extend a severe thunderstorm warning on top of that, likely to include that tornado possible tag, which indeed it is. Now, get this, it's for 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts, that severe thunderstorm warning. So this is the first warning that we had today with that tag.
Yeah, we have been expecting kind of those 80+ mile per hour wind gusts, and I do think as the night does go on, Tyler, we are going to see more of those 80-mile-per-hour plus wind tags. You know, this is kind of just phase one. Let's take a look just general at radar right now. We do have what we call kind of these discrete cells. That's why we're seeing a lot of rotation, especially on the southern extent of what's now kind of congealing into a line pattern. We are expecting, as it does kind of move more into this linear mode of storm pattern here, you can kind of see that line. We are going to see that turn more so into a very high wind risk. We know we've been kind of throwing around the word derecho. It's been in a couple of discussions as of earlier on this morning and this afternoon. So that's definitely a possibility. Be still aware, and it's pretty quiet here and around the Sioux Falls area, eastern parts of the state, but just be aware they could be extending even some of those watches that we do have in effect into portions of Minnesota and Iowa there, Tyler.
You know, looking at that tornado warning still in Gregory County, I think the potential is there where that velocity scan is the greatest. It could drift into Charles Mix County as it slowly makes its way into Nebraska. Tornado still observed. That's what we're looking at for the tag here, and we're still looking at that being. It's almost one of those scenarios where it's kind of hard to see at times, but
Right.
you know, we did have one on the ground earlier that was north and east of the Gregory area, and so that storm still was some very impressive rotation. And while there is not as much impressive rotation around the Burke area, that storm really has intensified just over the last couple of radar scans. So that's something to watch out for too. Even south of Gregory, another little discrete cell has formed. And that's what we're looking at with regard to that. I will be interested to see if they extend the tornado warning as we get closer to the 6 o'clock hour technically. But right now, the big focus is on this severe thunderstorm warning, because not only is there an embedded tornado, but this is the first severe thunderstorm warning of the night with 80-mile-an-hour potential wind gust threat within that.
Yeah, and that's very damaging wind gusts. That's 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts. You are going to be blowing around anything that's really not secured to the ground over there. Let's go ahead and take another look at some of these radar scans, and I want to draw our attention to our hail tracker right now, along with that 80-mile-per-hour wind gust just down the Gregory, the Platte area, just to the west of the Lake Andes area right now. We are tracking some very still sizable hail. We are still getting that radar estimate, 1.5 upwards of 2 inches for some of these scans up here. So that's also something to keep in mind, especially maybe if you are out or planning to go on the roadways, maybe just wait off on that a little bit. We are tracking some very powerful storms here, along with that rotation, hail, gusty winds, 80 miles per hour. Notice just to the north of the Fulton area, picking up some very bright categories here, 1.8 inches for our hail tracker. That is on that severe thunderstorm warning. Let's take a look at that near or just to the north of the Fulton area right now. It does look like that has intensified over just the last 10 minutes or so. What would you say, Tyler?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I was just looking too. They've allowed for now, that tornado warning to expire that was in Gregory County, but they're likely going to be reissuing it looks like, because just over the last little bit, there is a tornado still on the ground. And again, it's still pretty impressive overall. The storm spotters are in kind of a dead zone regarding coverage and whatnot, but still, that is something we're likely going to be seeing getting reissued. So the broad scope of this storm, in addition to the embedded tornado, is that 80-mile-an-hour wind gust threat. So the latest scans showing that intensifying, moving southeast. Lake Andes, you are included in that. Burke, you're included in that too, as it's going to be making its way into Nebraska. Looking at the velocity scan again, very impressive as it kind of is falling right along the river. Right there, as it's going to be making its way to the south and east, and slowly getting into Nebraska, I think, eventually. But it's going to potentially still drift into portions of kind of western Charles Mix County, and that's why we want to stress too. By the way, Lake Andes, be on the lookout as this moves through.
I would definitely agree with that. You are in the Lake Andes area, just on the far eastern extent of this technical warning box here. Look at this velocity scan too. Still very impressive, even though they have allowed technically that tornado warning to expire. As you were mentioning, Tyler, I wouldn't be surprised if they did reissue that. We're watching some live footage here. It does still look like there is a tornado on the ground with this. And on top of that, we're talking about those 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Also on this warning tag, around ping pong ball size hail. Another thing to keep in mind, and someone's personal weather station actually reported a 79-mile-per-hour gust. So this is not only radar indicated, it was actually indicated also by somebody's personal weather station, along with that very strong rotation. Let's take a look again just up to the north. It does look like, I would say probably that hook echo is intensifying even a little bit more. Let's take a look at that latest velocity scan on this tornado warning. Not technically confirmed, but there has been very strong rotation. Again, I'll mention this too. We're kind of in that dead zone for radars, but let's see, there we go. We can pick it up a little bit by the Sioux Falls radar as it does travel to the southeast, just to the west of the Washington Springs area right now. You can see kind of where that rotation couplet is at the moment here.
Well, and Lexi, now they just reissued that tornado warning, which is good, obviously, because it's very rain wrapped. So it's very hard to see, but there is still a tornado on the ground in portions of Gregory County, and this goes until 6:15 for tonight. And in addition to that, there is a particularly dangerous situation thunderstorm warning with this now too, just because of that 80-mile-an-hour wind gust threat in addition to. So this is kind of the beginning stages of what's ultimately going to transition into that wind gust threat. And as you were looking at, still some really impressive velocity scans that will translate to the ground, as there is a tornado confirmed on the ground right now, moving off to the south and east, and eventually will try to cross Highway 18, but it looks like it's going to kind of follow right along the river for the time being. But as we were talking about, Charles Mix County, be on the lookout too, Lake Andes as well. And also, again, still looking at these tornado warnings too, which for the time being are Doppler radar indicated. And there is still an impressive little kind of hook trying to develop in Buffalo County, north of the Crow Creek area. So keep that in mind. Yeah,
very prevalent, just even on this general reflectivity scan there, Tyler. You can kind of see right where that hook echo, pretty defined, even though it is pretty, I would say, not super organized technically on our velocity scans here. Let's take another look at those couple of warnings. Again, pretty messy on that velocity scan. You can still kind of see it right in between two radars right now, but let's take a look once again at that confirmed tornado, that dangerous situation heading towards the Bone Steel area right now. We've been watching this kind of cycle over and over, and it does look like, once again, Tyler, there is a tornado on the ground. If you are in places like the Bone Steel area, now is the time to take cover in the lowest level of your home.
Yeah, and you were pointing out too, Lexi, a few moments ago, so this storm is moving southeast at 40 miles an hour. It's about 30 miles west of Lake Andes, but like you said too, I just want to recap this. A personal weather station was reported in this area of an 80-mile-an-hour wind gust. So again, this just kind of fulfills the fact that this severe thunderstorm warning is also for 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts, as that's starting to kind of form, intensify, and make its way to the south and east. And kind of looking at just kind of a broad scope at First Alert Live Doppler radar, we're still looking at those severe thunderstorm warnings in northeastern South Dakota, and right now a lot of them are for quarter-size hail and 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Nothing, that's not great, obviously, but not as bad as what's going on further to the south. And you were pointing out this one lone cell that's let's see, it is in effect until 6 o'clock for tonight. It would be this cell right here.
Not very big, but mighty.
No. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it still has that threat of producing upwards of 2.5 inches in diameter hail, so that's approaching baseball-size hail.
Yeah, and the thing about that storm, Tyler, there's no other storms kind of around it. As we say, it's kind of on the discrete side, nothing around it, so it is kind of taking up all of the energy that is in that area right now. I see you do have hail pulled up. What's our hail size estimate on this particular cell there?
Boy, just northeast, right there, about baseball-size hail.
3-inch hail about.
Yeah, I mean, that's some really impressive hail and just that little discrete cell all by itself. And, kind of zooming out a little bit more and looking at some of the other hail areas that are seeing hail, northeastern South Dakota, some larger hail beginning to form kind of south of the Britton area, over 2 inches in diameter. Again, this is Doppler radar estimate. Sometimes that can be overdone a little bit. More often than not, it is kind of true to what's going on at the surface. But further south, still some hail developing, not as intense as it was earlier, as that's kind of an indication that this is starting to shift more toward that wind gust threat for tonight.
Yeah, and that's kind of going to be the pattern that we see over the next several hours here. Remember, guys, this is kind of just phase one of our day today. We're going to be seeing more of this linear pattern. You can kind of see that already forming. We started out with all those supercells, that discrete pattern where it's just a single storm here and there, and now you can see even these warning boxes are really indicative of that line formation forming, and could even see this turn more so into a bow echo. I know we've been throwing around the D word, the derecho word here over the course of the last couple of hours. That is still a possibility as we head over the next several hours. So although things are pretty quiet in the I-29 corridor, at least the southern extent of that, and Minnesota and Iowa, that is heading our direction as we head over the next several hours. Still want to stay weather aware, even though there's not really anything happening farther to the east right now.
And it's going to be really in portions of central and southern South Dakota that look to be favored to get that line segment to form and then race their way off to the east. And that's what we're seeing kind of right now. Further north, though, I mean, still some strong storms, some dangerous storms, certainly with regard to that hail. As a matter of fact, it looks like there was a new severe thunderstorm warning that was just issued for portions of Edmonds, Falk, and Spink counties. And I was just going to pull up some details on that because, again, the hail threat is still a big time issue. And yet again, with that cell, it is for 2.5 inches in diameter hail. So now we're approaching the size of tennis ball size hail as that's making its way to the south and east, and could even get a little bit of rotation to form with that as well.
Yeah, and another thing to note, yes, we do have confirmed tornadoes on the ground, a couple of tornado warnings in effect right now. As you were saying, with that tennis ball size hail just to the, it looks like south of the Aberdeen area, Edmonds, Falk, and Spink County, that's around tennis ball size hail heading in your direction. That could be very, very destructive at times. So just be aware of that. Still take all of the severe thunderstorm warnings very, very seriously on top of still those tornado warnings. We still do have this confirmed tornado on the ground in Gregory County, Bone Steel, the Shriver area. That is until 6:15 p.m. So we still do have a good over 20 minutes left on this warning here.
Yeah, that we do, Lexi. And we're still looking at, I'm just kind of revisiting the tornado warning that's in Gregory County because this is the one that's been confirmed. It's been on the ground. It's had multiple touchdowns within that same supercell. This is very similar to what we saw around the Watertown area last night, right? We had that one lone supercell that was that produced the tornado for a while and still continued to rotate as it made its way further off to the south and east. And within this cell, we still have that severe thunderstorm warning for 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts as that's about to cross Highway 18 and get into portions of Charles Mix County, including the Lake Andes area. So some very, very strong winds are going to be moving through. Another issue we're looking at too, still monitoring this tornado warning. It remains Doppler radar indicated, but still, Lexi, a pretty good signature on radar. And if we, look and see here, this is where we would get that tornado. This is where that rotation would be, kind of within that little hook echo there.
Yeah, and actually, let's go ahead and take a look. We do have a new velocity scan in on that warning right now. It is looking more intense than the last couple of scans that we have gotten in. Still, I do believe we're pulling from the Sioux Falls radar. Actually, we're pulling from the Aberdeen radar. It looks like it's a good amount away from the radar. We are seeing that velocity, very strong velocity index. Remember, if you're looking at that green shade, that is traveling towards that radar. So to the north with that velocity scan and to the south with that red. So very, very strong rotation, even though it is not technically confirmed on the ground.
Right, and I'm just kind of going back and reading a little bit of details regarding this. You know, this storm is moving to the east, still at 35 miles an hour. Golf ball size hail still a threat, but right now no actual touchdowns just yet, which is great news regarding that. But you know, remain very vigilant as we go throughout. Now, as we go back to that one tornado warning still in effect until 6:15 for Gregory County. Even looking at one of the latest scans, a really good little notch forming right in here, and that's where that tornado is. I'm looking at it right now. There's some very heavy rain around it, but we do have a confirmed tornado on the ground, and this is why we have that area in purple for the southern extents of Gregory County. And by the way, that does look to get over the Highway 18 corridor and eventually get into Nebraska should it remain on that path as it moves to the southeast.
Yeah, and we kind of are expecting it to remain on that path. When you get some of these stronger supercells, it's not uncommon for them to take what we call a right turn. And we've seen this with this particular cell as it has cycled over and over and lifted and dropped that tornado. So definitely something to be aware of. That does expire at 6:15, but I am assuming they are going to at least reissue that with some radar indicated rotation there.
Absolutely, Lexi. And, you know, as we're kind of coming to the end of our traditional 5:30 newscast, we're going to kind of leave you with this before we reset the table a little bit. We're still monitoring, in particular, really focusing on this tornado warning. It's in Gregory County until 6:15. This is the one that's confirmed that is on the ground. And in addition, areas that are in that yellow box, that's the severe thunderstorm warning. That's for 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts as these storms are making their way to the south and east. Additional warnings still in effect right now, further off to the north, including a couple of tornado warnings that are radar indicated right now. We will have further updates on that. We're going to kind of take a brief pause. We'll reset the table a little bit, and we're going to be back for our 6 o'clock newscast on KSFY, and we'll be back on all of our channels with additional weather coverage. So stick around.
Dakota News Now begins with First Alert Weather.
Well, thank you again for joining us. I'm First Alert meteorologist Tyler Roney, being joined by meteorologist Lexi Murley. And Lexi, we continue to track multiple tornado warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings, and a couple of actual tornadoes that are on the ground right now.
Exactly. You know, Tyler, when I came in this morning and much of our area was under a level 3 or that elevated level 4 risk from the SPC, I knew today was going to be a very active day for weather, and it's turning out that is exactly true.
Yeah, we're still looking at that observed tornado in effect, that tornado warning until 6:15 for portions of Gregory County. And within that, we have a severe thunderstorm warning as well. And that's for 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts, which is very, very impressive. And what we're seeing right now, this is the area where that tornado would be at. We're getting a nice notch forming, and that's where that tornado would be. And so as we look at some of the latest scans, again, very, very impressive. And we're going to actually, we have some footage of the tornado video that we can show you right now. Let's go ahead and take a look at this.
Wow.
This is incredibly impressive. This is from Dixon, South Dakota. And this is where, again, we had this same supercell actually produce that tornado. And you can just see how intense it is, too, with that rotation, some of the debris being lofted as well. Yeah,
it looks like a very powerful, very violent tornado. That has been confirmed on the ground now multiple times. Look at that structure on that also.
Well, and it's one of those cases too, Lexi, where it forms, it's very, very strong, it's damaging, it kind of retreats a little bit. This is a clear view of that, but with some of the latest ones with this Gregory County warned tornado warning, a lot of heavy rain is forming within that, and that's what we call a rain wrap tornado that we're seeing on radar. But that is very, very impressive and very similar, kind of eerily similar to what we just saw last night around the Watertown area.
Yeah, very dangerous situation going out here over the last couple of hours with this particular supercell. Let's go ahead and go back to our radar. It looks like we do have a couple other just still pictures of that image. Wow, that looks like a very powerful tornado. By the way, that is still warned as an active tornado warning on the ground for yet another 15 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if they did reissue that.
And we're still looking at a couple of tornado warnings in effect too. Latest update on this as well. This just came in with this latest one that we've been looking at in central South Dakota. Still radar indicated as of now, but there is still that potential of a tornado, which is 8 miles southeast. 12 miles rather north of the Kimball area. It's moving southeast at about 40 miles an hour. Half dollar-sized hail is still a big threat, and weather spotters have reported a funnel cloud with this cell, and that's not a surprise because there has been some pretty good rotation within this one as well.
Yeah, and so speaking of rotation, it's kind of in between radars right now, but let's go ahead and take a look at that latest velocity scan. Maybe even a little bit weaker, but you know, they did just reissue this, not technically on the ground, but as Tyler was mentioning just a couple of minutes ago, we did receive a storm report of a funnel cloud, so very strong rotation. You can kind of see that here, the Elvira area just to the south of you. It is heading towards places like Kimball, the White Lake, eventually the Plankinton area. That is something you want to be aware of within the next hour. Mind you, let's take a look at some of the details on this storm here. A look at this now new incoming tornado warning. That is once again for a tornado potentially, and also half dollar-sized hail. Weather spotters have reported a confirmed funnel cloud not touching the ground yet, but that does mean that any time, any moment really, that tornado could be on the ground within seconds.
And Lexi, you know, the other thing is too, we're still watching out for a couple other thunderstorm warnings. We're not going to spend as much time on these that are around the Sisseton area, you know, Day, Marshall, Roberts County. Be on the lookout. Obviously, you're under a severe thunderstorm warning for 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts and quarter-size hail. This cell still pretty impressive in portions of Edmonds, Falk, and Spink counties because this has the threat to produce tennis ball-size hail. It remains in effect for another 40 minutes or so, and this one is moving off to the east at about 40 miles an hour. It's 16 miles southwest of the Warner area, so keep that in mind too. A little bit further south, obviously, we've been highlighting this cell too, the tornado warning storm in the Buffalo County area that remains in effect until 6:15. But even some pretty impressive hail trying to be shown with this cell too in Hughes and Hyde County. That is in effect until 6:45. Right now, it looks impressive on radar, but right now it's only warned for quarter-size hail and 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Likely that could change with some of the intensification of that too.
Yeah, and you know, Tyler, I do have our hail tracker pulled up right now. Sometimes this does blow it a little bit out of proportion, but just to the north and the east of the Fulton area, that cell that you were tracking, that severe warned storm, radar is estimated 2.5-inch hail on that. Let's take a look also elsewhere with some of those also severe warned storms. Looks like some of that hail in places just around the Sisseton area with that severe warned storm, indicating around 1-inch hail on that, which I do believe that's what the tag is for that particular warning. And let's once again revisit south central South Dakota. That's where a lot of this action is taking place, not just with those tornado warnings, but a lot of the time with these supercells that have that very, very strong rotation that we are picking up on our velocity tracker, also producing some very sizable hail. Just one of these scans that I did pull up, 1.5-inch hail. That looks to be just to the east of the Gregory area right now. That's moving southeast too.
And we're also looking at, I'm going to show you this too, because I want to highlight the fact that we do have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect. Temperatures, here we go, let's go back to this. Watch is in effect until 10 o'clock for tonight. And the Storm Prediction Center has just mentioned that they're going to be likely expanding this watch into Minnesota and Iowa. So for our viewers that are watching in Minnesota and Iowa, there will likely be a watch getting issued. And when that does get issued, we will be sure to let you know. But that is to be no surprise as those storms continue to make their way off to the east. We continue though, as just even looking at a kind of a broad scale of First Alert Live Doppler radar, these storms are going to merge into a line and eventually race off to the east. So we still are looking out for the potential for wind gusts of 80 to 100 miles an hour. That is still on the table for tonight, unfortunately. So that's why things seem quiet right now. And, you know, places like Sioux Falls, Yankton, Mitchell, Northwest Iowa, that's still a threat for tonight as those storms move through. And again, still looking really at this cell in Gregory County right now until 6:15. Still a confirmed tornado remains on the ground, Lexi.
Yeah, and you know, Tyler, you did pull up those temperatures. One thing to know, we are still sitting in the 80s and even some lower 90s in southeastern portions of our viewing area. Dew points, there is a lot of moisture in the air, 70s. We've seen potentially some lower 80-degree dew points. That is all creating these fuel for these storms. And notice notice, as Tyler was mentioning, kind of more of a discrete storm structure right now. That being, they're pretty far apart from each other, but you notice these are starting to take more of a linear approach. You can kind of see where that line formation is forming right now, stretching from the northeast corner of the state and down through South and Central South Dakota. Pretty much all along this line, we do have some pretty intense, some warned storms. And note, we do have a couple more of our storm reports that have been rolling in just to the this new one to the that would be the west of the Westington Springs area. That is where that funnel cloud, that not to confirm tornado on the ground, but there is a tornado warning. There was a report of a funnel cloud around 5:35. A storm chaser did report that. So there has been a funnel cloud. Don't know if it's quite touched down, but potentially that could be within a matter of minutes. I want to stay weather aware around that area too.
Yeah, you know, another thing I want to point out too, as we kind of just take a temporary pause on the active severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings, is the risk for heavy rain. You know, we haven't talked about that quite enough yet, but the excessive rainfall outlook is still very much prevalent for tonight, especially in northeastern South Dakota and into Minnesota and Iowa. Slight risk for some heavy rain still does exist for today. We had some flash flood warnings in and around the Marshall area earlier on, like last night, and we even dealt with a lot of that around Watertown last night too. Just some water over roadways, a lot of flooding going on in northeastern South Dakota as well. And that's something that's going to continue again for tomorrow as well, kind of looking ahead a little bit, more rain on the way for the day tomorrow. By the way, as we go through this evening, those storms are going to continue to intensify and race their way east. So that's why we're likely going to be getting that severe thunderstorm watch to get expanded into Minnesota and Iowa as they get out of here very quickly, which is good. But in the short term, that's something that's still going to be impacting the eastern parts of our area as we get a little bit later on into tonight.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. Now that we're kind of in the midst of this severe weather, we are getting a much better look at how these storms are going to be tracking out, how they are interacting with each other, how they're intensifying across the area right now. I want to go ahead and take another look at the latest velocity scan that we do have in Gregory County, I believe, just to the south of the Geddes area, west of the Lake Andes area. Still some very strong rotation. That severe warned storm, 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts, and also inside of that severe thunderstorm warning right now. Remember, we still do have this tornado warning, a little smaller in Gregory County until 6:15. Wouldn't be surprised if they did reissue that, just because look at that rotation. It is still going very, very strong with that rotation. Remember, that red heading away from that radar and that green is heading towards the radar. Even some of that, it looks like just to the east of the Burke area right now. But let's go ahead and take a look again at some of those velocity scans now a little bit up to the north. Look at that velocity scan, Tyler. Now getting into some of those shades of the blue. That is some very intense velocity on our wind product here.
Yeah, and that's always a good threat of not only that potential rotation, but of course indicating that there's some very strong winds aloft in our atmosphere that's going to try to mix down to the surface, and that's what's going to try to drive this potential line of storms that we track later on for tonight. We actually do have some videos that we can check out to show, wow, I mean, that is a very, it's that kind of almost stovepipe structure a little bit, Lexi.
Very well structured storm, damaging, very intense tornado that looks like it was just around the Dixon, South Dakota area. We got this video in not too terribly long ago, I believe, too.
Yeah, and you know, thank goodness so far a lot of things have been fairly rural for the most part, but again, you know, that's something that it could easily change for tonight as those storms make their way further off to the east. But that is some very impressive footage of that storm and just kind of the nature of it too. And this is before we started to see the rain really intensify as well. So this is obviously not a rain wrap tornado, but still that was on the ground, and this is why we had that observed tornado tag. That's why that box that you were in was in the shade of purple.
Right, that is an observed tornado still on the ground. We're getting a couple more videos of that very violent tornado. You can see that luckily in that rural area, as Tyler was mentioning, and you know, as we head over the next several hours, this line of potentially strong to severe storms, that's going to be moving closer towards more of those populated areas in eastern parts of the state, eventually into portions of Minnesota and Iowa as we head later into this evening and overnight tonight. Right now, the storm structure that we are seeing has so far been discreet. Okay, yes, let's take a look. It did look like they just did reissue this now. Still a confirmed tornado warning on the ground. That's for now Charles Mix and Gregory County. A couple cities included in that: Bonesteel, Lake Andes, the White Swan area. This is heading your direction. I'm going to go ahead and pull up some of the latest details on this warning. It looks for central Charles Mix County and southeastern Gregory County. This is heading your direction. This does go until 7 p.m., so they have reissued that for another 40 minutes. It looks like it was located just 15 miles west of the Lake Andes area. That's moving pretty slow going right now to the south and east, just around 25 miles per hour. Along with that, I want to know also this tornado warning does have a tag for some very, very large hail. Ping pong ball size hail has been indicated in this storm as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is not, this is why we kept mentioning the Lake Andes area, because that looked like that was going to continue to take that right turn and kind of head right toward Lake Andes. So you're in that tornado warning now officially in the Lake Andes area. And that severe thunderstorm warning tag still very impressive too, with that threat for 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts still being in effect right now. And it's looking likely that we'll see kind of that severe thunderstorm warning getting expanded into like the Wagner area and further even south yet, potentially getting even toward the Tyndall area, Springfield, as it makes its way off to the south and east. And this is going to be kind of the southern edge of this line. And by the way, there's still a pretty impressive thunderstorm warning that's in just off to the south and west, and that's going to remain in effect too as it makes its way off to the east. And this is going to start to eventually connect as we go throughout the night. But look at if further off to the north, we're still monitoring this one lone tornado warning, which at the moment remains Doppler radar estimated, radar indicated rather. They just reissued that too for portions of Aurora, Brule, Davison, and Drawl County right now. So that's moving off to the south and east. Plain you're in that warning officially now. Mitchell not technically in the warning right now, but we're seeing that making its way off to the south and east. So we're going to keep a very close eye on that, as you should in the Mitchell area too. You're not in the warning, but this will also, I want to point out, cross Interstate 90 just by about, I would say 640, 650 or so when it moves in.
640, 650. I would definitely agree with you on that, Tyler. And also one thing we do want to note to our viewers right now, where we're seeing some of those tornado warnings, it's a very clear image of those tornadoes. That's also potentially going to be changing as we head over the next several hours. Take a broader look at radar here. Once again, I do want to mention we are looking at a lot of these cells kind of merging, and that is becoming kind of that linear formation here. So still looking at all severe hazards as we head over the next several hours, and something that does potentially happen when we do have more of these linear storm modes. We could still see some rotation along the leading edge of that. Not as pretty on our velocity tag, so it is harder to warn, and some of those could potentially spin up very quickly. So right now, pretty easy to see where those warned storms are, but that could be changing as this does take more of a linear or that line formation, that type of storm mode here, Tyler.
Well, and it looks like that we were mentioning with this one tornado warning that's been observed that's making its way into Charles Mix and Gregory County. We were talking about Bonesteel, and it looks like on one of the storm spotter footage here that a house was hit. Unfortunately, a rural house, like on an acreage, but that's again so Bonesteel was impacted with this particular cell. We're looking out in the Lake Andes area. Granted, right now, it does look like that better area for rotation is trying to stay just to the south and west of Lake Andes, but still, you don't want to mess with this because obviously it could easily start to turn a little bit more as it makes its way to the south and east. But Bonesteel did look like Bonesteel was hit with this particular tornado.
Very unfortunate with that there. And even just on that general reflectivity scan that you do have up there right now, Tyler, you can kind of see that little notch, that little indent in that storm there. That is indicating, again, some of that strong rotation. Yep, Tyler's pointing at it right now. That's exactly where that stronger rotation right now, that's kind of the danger zone. Take a look at that velocity, that wind product. That is where we're picking up that stronger rotation. Remember, still a tornado confirmed on the ground with this particular warning once again.
Yeah, I mean, that is just still very impressive to see as we're seeing that moving on through. And still looking to the north at the one tornado warning that remains in effect until 7 o'clock. This still Doppler radar indicated, but some of the latest scans, still showing that kind of intensifying around the Washington Springs area, mainly to the south and west, of course. But heavy rain, some large hail still associated with that. The velocity scan on that looking a little bit clearer now in a way, where that's why they issued that tornado warning. Some good velocity right there, some good rotation being pointed out. And I mean, as far as the hail tracker goes, we'll take a look at a current scan of everything. Not as impressive right now with some of the hail. Exception would be just south of Aberdeen, south of the Warner area, kind of around Millette. We're looking at some potential. Let's get the latest scan on that. There we go. Approaching 2 inches in diameter, which would be about the size of an egg. So still, that's some very large hail, and that's kind of one of the only areas at the moment where we're dealing with that very large hail.
Yeah, elsewhere, again, we're dealing with some very strong rotation just to the south of the Washington Springs area. Tyler looked at that on rotation, where that tornado warning not technically on the ground as of right now, but that is a potentially very dangerous situation. If you're in places like Kimball, the Plankington area, that's going to be booking it towards the Mitchell area right now. Let's go ahead and take another look at that specific warning itself. You can see right where that rotation is, just to the north of the Kimball area. Remember, that is warned until 7 p.m. later on this evening, not just for that tornado, but we did look at that hail, still ping pong ball size hail. Radar indicated rotation. It does look like it is moving to the southeast at around 35 miles per hour. So storm motion on this particular storm getting even a little bit quicker. That is going to be impacting places like the Kimball, the Plankington area within the next 45 minutes or so. Let's try to get a storm track on this. Looks like around 6:44, nearing the Plankington area on that particular cell there, Tyler.
Yeah, Lexi, going back to that Charles Mix and Gregory storm, still, I mean, a really impressive notch has formed. And, you're talking about some really heavy rain associated with this as well still. And that's going to be making it even more challenging to see this tornado. But that is a kind of a textbook example of what we're seeing here. And, even areas that's within this severe thunderstorm warning, we're still looking at that threat for 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts. And it looks like just off to the south, I mean, I know that's not in our coverage area technically, but they did issue a new tornado warning in parts of Nebraska. That'd be Boyd County. Again, that's not in our coverage area, but still, they're kind of getting out ahead of that as it looks like it's going to be making its way further south.
I would say definitely a wise choice. Take a look at the latest velocity scan, and now we are able kind of to hone in on that with two separate radars here. Some very strong rotation just to the west of the Lake Andes area right now. So just looks to be skimming by technically the Lake Andes area, but notice you are both in that severe thunderstorm warning and that tornado warning. Still a very impressive 80-mile-per-hour wind gust tag on that specific severe thunderstorm warning right now. Taking kind of a look at the bigger picture, Tyler, what are we talking over the next several hours here?
Well, right now, Lexi, kind of looking at what's going on presently, we have multiple severe thunderstorm warnings stretching from northeastern South Dakota all the way to the south central part of the state. And this is going to still form a line of storms. That's still kind of what the projections are, especially in this area, as they're going to be making their way to the south and the east. So this is what we're going to be seeing still trying to form as the night goes on. So that's what we're watching for right now. And I do want to point out that the latest watch is still in effect until 10 o'clock for tonight in the areas in blue. But if you've been kind of listening to what our coverage has been so far, there is likely going to be an expansion of that severe thunderstorm watch to include Minnesota and Iowa later on tonight, because those storms eventually will be moving into parts of western Iowa and western Minnesota. And as a matter of fact, this is what that's going to be looking like as we check out Futurecast. Storms continue to intensify, move in, and then they'll race their way off to the east and should be out of the area, it looks like, after midnight to 1 o'clock in the morning, at least the greatest severe weather threat. But I mean, a very impressive setup for today, because this is what our outlook for severe weather is, and it's very rare to get this level 4 out of 5 threat in our area, level 4 or 5 for that matter. And we're kind of targeted right over much of the Dakota News Now coverage area. Yeah,
most definitely, Tyler. And even when I woke up for the early morning shift this morning, that was more centralized with that level 4 risk over the Aberdeen area. And we just saw that has been kind of expanded and shifted a little bit farther to the southeast. That does include the Sioux Falls area now in that level 4 out of 5. Pretty rare scenario for us here. in the Sioux Falls area. That is something to be aware of for later on this evening. I want to draw our attention a little bit up to the north. We were picking up just a little bit of weak rotation on this particular severe thunderstorm warning. That's for Spink County for another 25 minutes or so. That does expire at 6:45, but the warning tag on this, very impressive, and you can kind of see that in our data here. This is actually warned for 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts and baseball-sized hail, very significant hail. Let's go ahead and take a look actually at that hail tracker, get some at least radar estimates. Of course, that has been warned now for around baseball-sized hail. Doesn't look that impressive really on our hail tracker here, but still some sizable hail. Let's go ahead and take a scan on that. It's small, but still a very mighty storm, something to be aware of. Pulling up around 1.5-inch hail on our hail tracker there. Actually, let's go ahead and take a look farther down to the south, get some more of those estimates. Still some very impressive readings here just to the west of the Lake Andes area. Let's pull up a couple of those details here. Again, 1.5-inch hail south of the Wessington Springs. Both of these have been warned for tornadoes. That tornadic activity, very strong rotation, a lot of times can produce very, very large hail, and that's what we're kind of seeing play out here. Mind you, where we are looking at that severe warning moving into portions of northern Nebraska, nearly 3-inch hail down there right now. Thankfully, that's out of our immediate viewing areas, but some very, very large hail down there.
Really intensify very quickly, and we're still looking at that one tornado warning that remains a confirmed tornado for portions of Charles, Mix, and Gregory County. Now more so kind of southeastern Gregory County, more so getting into Charles, Mix County. Lake Andes, be on the lookout. Can't stress that enough. Latest scan of First Alert Live Doppler radar, the reflectivity here showing some pretty good rotation still, and this is where that tornado would be. Let's see, we got a little bit of an update on that. I'm going to read that location. Let's see, let's get a little bit further south. There we go. So we're going to read an update on that. At 6:09, so obviously this was 15 minutes ago. We already talked about this, but this was around the Bone Steel area. Unfortunately, did move through. It's moving off to the southeast at about 25 miles an hour. Still does contain ping pong ball size hail. And it looks like, too, they did kind of reissue that severe thunderstorm warning that's around that as well. Perhaps not. It looked like it was maybe updated. I want to see if they might have reissued it just for the sake of talking about that wind gust threat.
It looks like it's up to around 70 mile per hour for those wind gusts now. 2-inch hail is that update with that one, Tyler. Okay, so they still have that potential for 70 to 80 mile an hour wind gusts, toning down just a little bit, but still 70 mile an hour wind gusts, very strong. You know, we had some reports of that even around the Sioux Falls area last night, so that kind of gives you an indication on how strong that is. Trying to move toward the Lake Andes area. A little bit of it, the latest kind of velocity scan here is trying to show it going a little bit further south and west of Lake Andes. I'm going to kind of loop the velocity over the last hour or so. That is good news as it's trying to stay to the south and west of Lake Andes, but I still suggest being in your safe place in the Lake Andes area. Even down toward Wagner too, you know, downstream a little bit more in Charles, Mix County, because the storm is continuing to make its way to the south and east, but it is trying to turn more into Nebraska, and that's why you're seeing that additional tornado warning getting extended into Nebraska around the Spencer area. Yeah, take a look also up to the north. That still tornado warning heading towards places like Kibble, the Plankinton area. You guys are just on the outskirts of this warning, technically still in it. Again, kind of in that dead zone for our velocity scanner. You're seeing some of that shade of purple. That's what that's indicating. But even though it is pretty far away in kind of that dead zone, we are still picking up some very impressive rotation off of that, as you can see.
Absolutely. We're looking to, Lexi, we're looking still kind of a broad scope here at First Alert Live Doppler radar. Northeastern South Dakota, still some severe thunderstorm warnings remaining in effect, but the big time focus remains on areas along and south of I-90 as we have still a couple of those tornado warnings in effect, and we're starting to see more of those kind of intense severe thunderstorm warnings lining up too. And, you know, you were highlighting this as well. I'm going to kind of zoom around here a little bit on First Alert Live Doppler radar. Those storms are developing into Nebraska and moving into the southern South Dakota area. So this is kind of a good indication that we are starting to slowly see that line of storms forming into that line that we're projecting to see those damaging wind gusts impact us later tonight.
Yeah, very unfortunate that this is kind of playing out how we were expecting it to, Tyler, because that could potentially lead to 80+ mph wind gusts over the eastern half of the state into portions of Minnesota, Iowa, as we head later on into this evening, especially as these track farther to the east over the next couple of hours here. Look at the southern extent of this more intense line. It does look like they have gone ahead and let that one warning expire, that confirmed tornado warning right now. So that is some good news for places like the Bonesteel, Lake Andes, the White Swan area. But notice you guys are still under technically that tornado warning. Let's go ahead and take a look. Some of that rotation, and as you can see right here, still some very strong rotation. So although they have technically let that tornado warning, that confirmed tornado warning expire as it does move to the southeast, still some very strong rotation. Still could see like what we've seen over the last couple of hours near places like the Lake Andes area, Bonesteel too, now just passing your area, moving to the southeast with this particular storm. Could see this cycle over and still drop that tornado.
And as we start to kind of come to an end of our traditional 6 o'clock newscast, we're going to kind of end with this briefly, kind of to set the stage again. We're still looking at a couple of those tornado warnings remaining in effect, along with multiple severe thunderstorm warnings right now. And we're going to continue our coverage on KDLT with our traditional 6:30 newscast, but obviously still continue our weather coverage on our Dakota News Now family of stations. So for now, we will send it to break, and our coverage will continue in just a couple of minutes.
Dakota News Now begins with First Alert Weather.
Weather coverage continues at 6:30. I'm meteorologist Tyler Roney, being joined by meteorologist Lexi Murley. And Lexi, it has been a very intense night of severe weather so far.
Yeah, really, these storms firing up in central parts of the state over the last several hours. They have been very intense, dropping just one tornado, but that's been kind of up and down and up and down. We are still tracking the remnants of that cell in south central South Dakota. Still tornado warned, by the way.
Yeah, a couple of tornado warnings still in effect at the 6:30 half an hour. And this is the one that we're focusing on the most. This is the one that has had the history of actually producing tornadoes. It is still in effect for portions of Charles, Mix, and Gregory County until 7 o'clock, just to the south and west of the Lake Andes area. A little bit further north, we're still watching this storm too as it's making its way to the south and east. These are all radar indicated tornado warnings so far. And that's, still something you don't want to mess around with, but at least they are not confirmed on the ground or anything like that. And in addition, we're looking at those storms having the threat to produce some very, very large hail, as has been the case so far over portions of central and northern South Dakota. As a matter of fact, Lexi, we have some pretty impressive footage to check out right now, too.
Let's take a look at that. That was that confirmed tornado on the ground. That looks like it was in Dixon, South Dakota, sent with us in the last hour or so, I believe. That is very impressive storm structure. It was on the ground, it looks like, for several minutes. You can see just how powerful it is. Luckily, most of this activity has been in more rural areas, but we have been receiving reports of some storm chasers. They have been watching some of this tornado footage that has been destroying a couple of structures down in south central South Dakota.
Yeah, Bonesteel, unfortunately, was one of them where we've had some reports of some destruction. Like I for sure saw a house destroyed on one of the storm chaser footage, at least, and the house is kind of caved in a bit with that storm. As we're looking now, this is the storm, this is the same cell anyway that did produce that tornado on the ground, and now the core of that, as we're looking at the velocity, is to the south and west of the Lake Andes area, and kind of the core of that is about to move into Nebraska. So that part is good news. But if you notice this area too, the severe thunderstorm warning, 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts are still in effect. And if you look too, we're looking at the potential for some very, very large hail. In addition to that, that's something that we saw in central South Dakota. Right now, the greater hail threat seems to be in Nebraska. But locally in the South Dakota area, not as much of that large hail going on at the present moment. Still, though, Lexi, room for that to change. Yeah,
most definitely. And we've so far for this afternoon and now into the early evening hours, Tyler, we've kind of been seeing the mode of severe weather has been pretty discreet. Some of these single-celled storms, we are watching this currently actually taking effect right now. That's turning more into a linear storm pattern. Unfortunately, it does look like it is going to still be very intense as it does head towards eastern South Dakota and eventually into portions of Minnesota and Iowa over the next several hours. Along with that, mainly looking at that gusty wind threat, really all forms of severe weather still going to be on the table. So want to stay weather aware for pretty much everything here over the next several hours. Could still see a couple of isolated tornadoes, even though this is going to take more of a linear form, and you kind of see that playing out during just right now, stretching from the northeast corner of the state all the way down to south and central South Dakota, where we do have some of those more intense storms.
Well, and right now, now this is not in the Dakota News Now coverage area, but the Storm Prediction Center did issue a new severe thunderstorm watch that does include the Twin Cities until 1 a.m. and that's in mainly central portions of Minnesota. So that's not in our coverage area. Everything else in South Dakota, that watch remains in effect until 10 o'clock for tonight. So that is an update on that. I mean, obviously we were talking about the potential of that watch being expanded. So far, nothing in southwestern Minnesota, northwestern Iowa, still a chance for that to be expanded as well. But going back and looking at that tornado-warned storm that's just to the south and west of Lake Andes, yeah, definitely not as impressive as what it was once on radar earlier on. Again, that's just fine. But it is still going to be making its way to the south and east and slowly drifting into Nebraska. The velocity scans have been a little not as impressive, but there's still clearly some rotation there. This is a little bit better here as it's made its way through the Bone Steel area, and it's about to get over Highway 14 there now finally as it's making its way to the south and is about to get into Nebraska. And Lexi, still we're keeping an eye on this lone tornado-warned storm that's to the north as well. This is still to the northwest of Plankinton. Is going to be crossing I-90 here within this half an hour. Yeah, and I do have that velocity scan pulled up on this particular tornado warning right now. Again, kind of between those two radars right now, but we are picking this up from the Sioux Falls radar. Still some pretty intense rotation with this storm, so that's something to keep in mind over the next couple of hours. This does expire at the top of the hour, so still around 25 minutes left on this particular warning. Still very strong rotation. I wouldn't be surprised if they did go ahead and reissue that even at the top of the hour. Let's take a closer look at some of those details, some of those finer details. Now, that is just on the edge of the Plankinton area right now. This is moving in effect until 7 p.m. for northwestern Davison, Aurora, and Gerald County in central parts of the state right now. A severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was located around 8 miles to the northeast of the Kimball area. That is moving rather slowly just to the south and east, around 20 miles per hour right now. But as it does kind of rotate over the same area, moving very slowly, that rotation, some damaging wind gusts, some hail, even heavy rainfall, could see some minor flooding issues over the next couple of hours, not just with this particular warning, but as you can see with all of these warnings, that does remain a possibility. And revisiting the severe thunderstorm warning that's in Spink County right now, it's going to be expiring here in about 9 minutes or so, but this is still for some golf ball size hail, and that's certainly some very large hail as it's making its way through. So that could potentially be getting reissued as it makes its way southeast, and unfortunately, you know, that's heading right for, as it takes that southeasterly path toward the Watertown area. You know, obviously very hard hit last night. Cottington County area especially hard hit with regard to severe weather last night, and we've already had some pretty intense rain make its way through northeastern portions of South Dakota so far. No active warnings though anymore in northeastern South Dakota. Those storms are kind of getting out of here pretty quickly, but what we're concerned about over these next couple of hours will be that potential merger of this line and racing their way to the east, which, by the way, as we look at, I'm going to scroll down to our Futurecast model here. This will show just that as it does try to intensify and race east later on this evening, and then does get out of here pretty fast. And that's been kind of the trend so far. These storms are moving at a pretty good rate of speed, and they will get out of here. And the other thing I want to point out very quickly too is that we're still looking at the threat for some heavy rainfall. We had some flash flooding that was going on around the Watertown area last night, the Marshall, Minnesota area as well. So it doesn't take very long for us to get some flooding to occur because the ground is very saturated over much of the region. And that's going to be a threat again tomorrow in the southern parts of the area too, Lexi. But yeah, right now, we're still no active tornadoes on the ground, but that's still going to be a threat. And that's why we're kind of sticking with our coverage right now.
Yeah, most definitely there, Tyler. And really, not just even that tornado threat, we are looking at still some very large hail, some damaging wind gusts. We earlier, just within the last hour or so, did see this southern extent of the cell in south central South Dakota. That was for 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Now, recently, it just has been kind of demoted, I guess, to around 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts, but that is still some very strong, some very damaging wind with this, again, very intense cell that's kind of set up in places like just to the south and east of the winter area right now. Try to get that warning box on it. Charles mixed that Gregory County, then around that general area too.
Yeah, right now, still that threat for those very, very strong wind gusts are going to be playing a role in what shapes the rest of our forecast for tonight. And, some of the latest scans on this particular model are pretty impressive too. As it's making its way to the south and east. And that's why I want to stress right now, people around the Mitchell area, keep an eye on this as it's going to be moving off to the south and east. Hopefully it stays off to your south and west, but it is making that southeasterly path. And again, velocity is going to be really hard to see because we're kind of right in the middle of some of the different radar sites. But this is where some of that rotation would be. And it's just to the west of Plankinton. So Plankinton, you're right in the path of this. So make sure that you are in your safe place. And we stress that even with the radar indicated tornadoes, because I know people think that we should just really seek shelter for the ones that are confirmed, but no, it doesn't take long for these to start to reach the ground. So that's what we're looking at with regard to that, and still looking out for that storm that's around the Lake Andes area, mainly to the south, as it's going to continue to slowly make its way further south, almost trying to become a little more rain wrapped again, Lexi, with that cell.
Do we have eyes on that at all with any storm chasers right now?
A lot of rain right now. And I was trying to pull up, this is what it kind of looks like on our Mitchell Avera Sky camera.
Yeah,
I'm going to show that right now.
Let's go ahead and take a look at that right now.
And this is trying to look off to the north and west at that storm. And right now there's just been so many clouds that have built in with it too. So we're going to keep a very close eye on this as it does start to try to approach the Mitchell area. Again, Mitchell, you're not officially under a warning right now, but you are kind of in proximity to that tornado warning right now.
Yeah, and one thing to note, Tyler, as these storms do become potentially more rain-wrapped, as we are seeing with the southern extent of that cell in Gregory County right now, it's going to be very difficult to spot with the naked eye. So again, just want to stress to heed those warnings. They are very serious, as Tyler was mentioning. Not technically a confirmed tornado on the ground right now, but we are still looking at a couple of those tornado warnings. We do have a couple more storm reports that we have gotten over the last hour or so. Let's take a look at that one very intense cell. That was near the Gregory area, Burke to be exact, around 6:15. So just about a half hour ago, this did roll in. 1.8, nearly 2-inch diameter hail with that. Hail varied in size from quarters to golf balls, most of them quarter to $half size hail. So still some sizable hail. Let's go ahead and scale back to kind of our hail tracker right now. It looks like what was happening in the northeast corner of the state has really detensified. That's starting to move out of our immediate coverage area, but taking a look near that cell, just to the north and the west of the Plankinton area right now. Let's go ahead and take a radar indicated look at that. Still indicating around 1.5-inch hail estimated by radar right now.
And with that cell that you're looking at, now we are just confined to portions of Aurora and Brule County until 7 o'clock. So you see some of the cities impacted that are in the path. It'd be Plankinton, Pleasant Lake, and White Lake. But as of 6:40, so just a couple of minutes ago, that is, it's near White Lake, but it's kind of 12 miles east of the Kimball area. It's moving to the southeast at about 35 miles an hour. And also the other thing to keep in mind is what you were looking at is the hail threat, 2-inch in diameter hail. So that's very, very damaging, needless to say. And as we've been mentioning too, 2-inch in diameter hail, that's about the size of an egg. So obviously that's going to be doing a lot of damage as that moves through. Plankton is going to be kind of right in the heart of where that cell moves through.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's go ahead and take another just general look at radar here. Again, we do have still multiple tornado warnings on the ground. It does look like the at least northern extent of this line is kind of detensifying, but it does look like we still do have just one severe thunderstorm warning that's popped up for portions of Cottington, Grant, and Roberts County, Big Stone County included in that. On the Minnesota side of things, Albin, Milbank, Ortonville in Minnesota, that is heading your direction very quickly. I'm going to pull up some of the details on this latest warning that they did issue. Let's take a look at that. It looks like it is just warned for 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts, quarter-size hail. So on the weaker end of things, as far as severe thunderstorm warnings go, that is just making the mark on that. But taking a look farther down to the south, where we've seen kind of the most damage, these tornado warnings, some very intense severe thunderstorm warnings still in effect for Aurora, Brule County with that tornado warning. Radar indicated with that so far, but still, that is a very serious situation. It does look like even some buildup on the front end of that cell heading towards the Mitchell area right now. That's intensifying a little bit, so be aware of that. If you're in places like Mitchell, that's heading in your general direction, not under any severe warning as of right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if one did get issued. And then again in Charles Mix, Gregory County, that does expire in about 15 minutes at the top of the hour. Again, that radar indicated tornado warning.
And what we're looking at right now, Lexi, too, I was going to point out that a lot of the energy from the southern extent of these storms are kind of robbing away the energy from the northeastern storms now. And I don't think people around the Watertown area are going to complain about that, naturally. Right. But right now, we are still seeing the strongest storms along and south of Interstate 90. And there's even a little bit more kind of building up to the east of Pierre yet again. Obviously not going to be as intense nonetheless, but this is just kind of a good little indication that we are finally beginning to see what's looking to be that line of storms moving into the southeastern parts of the region. And by the way, this warning still is for mainly some quarter-size hail and 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Still don't want to mess with that, obviously, but you know, nothing like what's going on further south. And again, still looking at that one lone tornado warning in effect in portions of Charles Mix and Gregory County. Just about going to be moving into Nebraska. Once it does, it'll be out of our coverage area, so we won't have to worry about that as much. And you know, like you were pointing out too, Lexi, the velocity scans haven't been as impressive. It is starting to show some signs of weakening, even some kind of weak rotation to the west of that too. Here we go. Let's see if we can pull that up to kind of point that out quickly too, if it will load. There we go. Just off to the west is where we're looking at a couple of areas of rotation trying to form, but again, once it does form, that would mainly get into Nebraska. Right.
It does look pretty messy, I would say, probably on our velocity scanner there, but we will certainly be keeping a close eye on that. Meanwhile, let's take a look kind of at that bigger picture. Once again, we are kind of seeing this play out even over the last half hour or so. This is taking more of a linear approach, and as we head over the next several hours, that's going to be traveling to south and eastern portions of our viewing area. Could be intensifying very quickly. Once again, we are still looking at all modes of severe weather on the table, especially some of those stronger winds as we head later on into this evening. Still, we've seen potentially some wind gusts over 70 miles per hour, 80 miles per hour. We had one of those reported gusts around 79 miles per hour already. That was confirmed on somebody's personal weather station in south central South Dakota. So these do look to re-intensify as we head over the span of this evening too.
And we're looking now at our Avera Sky camera over the Mitchell area. Mitchell, you're not technically under any sort of warning right now, and as a matter of fact, it looks like the kind of the core of that tornado warning that's just off to your west should stay off to your west. But if we now kind of go back to First Alert Live Doppler radar, there is a little bit of activity trying to develop just off to the east around the Woonsocket area. and now more so east of Wessington Springs. Not necessarily for rotation, but we're starting to see some of these storms merging a little bit more, as we were talking about some lines of storms forming. And even around Mitchell, you see that we're starting to get some heavy rain developing just off to your north and west, kind of around the Mount Vernon area. And also just want to go back to this warning briefly. Plankinton going to be right over you here over about the next 5 minutes or so. Large hail still a threat presently. Taking a look at that with that particular cell, I'm going to pause the the hail tracker rather, and kind of look at this core of that hail. So it's around the White Lake area, still estimates of about 1.5 inches to approaching 2 inches in diameter. So we're talking about golf ball to egg size hail as that's making its way through. It's moving through the White Lake area at the moment and moving off to the south and east right now, Lexi.
Yeah, it kind of looks like it is re-intensifying kind of with that hail core, as you mentioned. So still cycling with some of these stronger supercells that have just been kind of tearing through central parts of the state. Still, we do have a couple of tornadoes warnings down. If you're just tuning in for Aurora and Brule County, that's until the 7 o'clock hour. So another 12 minutes on that tornado warning. Then once again, we do have that other tornado warning that we have been tracking with that verified tornado that was on the ground just a couple of half hours ago in Charles Mix in Gregory County. That will also set to expire at 7 p.m. It looks like that one is generally moving out of our immediate viewing area. So good news for our immediate viewing area, bad news for Nebraska down there. Taking a look farther up to the north. Again, Tyler mentioned some of these southern extent storms are stealing a lot of the energy from the northern extent of this now more line formation that we are seeing that does look to trail to the south and east over the next several hours. So even though it might be quiet as of right now, places like Brookings, even here in the Sioux Falls area, that is going to be quickly approaching our direction here.
And I wanted to, and actually, as we take a look, they reissued that tornado warning.
Must have just reissued that.
Yes, for portions of Aurora, Brule, Davison, and Douglas County. So Mitchell, you are not going to be in this tornado warning. It is moving off to your south and west. It continues to take more of that right turn. New tornado warning in effect so far. That is going to be radar indicated at the moment. With this cell, we have not had any confirmation of any tornadoes that have been on the ground. Let's read some of the details about that, by the way. It's moving, it's 10 miles west of Plankinton officially with this core that we're looking at here. Golf ball size hail. Weather spotters have still confirmed that there's been a funnel cloud, but nothing otherwise has been on the ground. This is going to be near the Stickney area at 7:05, Aurora Center at about 7 o'clock. And again, this is moving off to the southeast at about 25 miles an hour. And pretty soon, we're going to be allowed to see this tornado warning expire that's around the Charles Mix and Gregory County area. And before we talk more about that, if we could briefly check out some of the footage from earlier today with this same supercell that we're looking at. This was around Dixon, South Dakota. So this is what was warned earlier, why we had an observed tornado on the ground. That purple polygon you saw, that was what was in effect earlier on. This was earlier on this evening, but this was what was on the ground, and it was very reminiscent in a way of what we saw around Watertown last night.
Yeah, definitely a very powerful storm. Some really great structure to that tornado. I'm not surprised. It was on the ground for at least a couple of minutes. Very strong storm with that. For the most part, the actual confirmed tornado has mainly stayed in rural areas, so that's some good news. But we have been receiving reports, been watching just a couple of storm chasers out in the area. There was at least, it looks like, one rural farmstead that was hit by this tornado, kind of directly in the path there. So still a very damaging storm. That does look like it has lifted for the moment, but we still do have a couple of active warnings. Taking a look at our velocity product once again here. At that cell that was producing that violent tornado that we just saw video footage of to the south of the Lake Andes area with some of that rotation, you can kind of see that kind of between radar scans right now, between different radars trying to pull some of this velocity data. That's why you're seeing some of the purple there. Taking a look farther up to the north, still looking at least a little bit of that rotation on that now new tornado warning. Let's go ahead and review that. That just did get issued a little while ago here. Get a tag on that once again. That is until 7:30 now. That does include portions of Aurora, Brule, Davison, and Douglas County. Cities included Dudley, Plankinton, Stickney, White Lake area. If you are in this warning, it's still a very serious tornado warning, even though it's not technically been spotted on the ground. We've seen multiple reports of funnels by storm chasers.
And yeah, we're still looking at this one, tornado warning that's in effect until 7 o'clock. That's going to likely be allowed to expire / moving into Nebraska. So we will, kind of stop really monitoring that one so much. But still all eyes on this one that's in effect that got reissued for portions of Aurora, Brule, and Davison and Douglas County until 7:30 for tonight. That continues to make its way through the Plankinton area, just about moving through itself. Moving off to the south and east. We're going to look a little bit further north. We were talking about this severe thunderstorm warning. If we want to, there we go. Let's zoom in on that one. Buffalo, Hughes, Lyman County until 7:30 for tonight. Large hail has been one of the primary threats with this one so far. Looking at the potential for some ping pong ball size hail with this storm, 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts as that continues to make its way to the south and east. That is going to be moving through the Fort Thompson area here within about the next 10 to 15 minutes or so. And that is what we have for current warnings so far.
I do believe we just did get that cell just to the east of the Pierre area did get severe warn there, Tyler. If we want to take a zoomed in look at that a minute, let's go ahead and take a look at that. It does look like even there might be some weak rotation, technically just a severe thunderstorm warning right now. Let's zoom in on that just to the north of the Chamberlain area with that warning box, that warning polygon that is shaded in the yellow. This is a new one that just came in about a minute ago. Let's take a look at this one. Has been issued for southeastern Hughes County, northeastern Lyman County, and southwestern Buffalo County, all in central South Dakota. That has been extended until 7:30, so still about 40 minutes on this storm. It is actually warned for 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts, but really hail is the kicker on this storm. Ping pong ball size hail. And if we could pull up our hail tracker with this, let's go ahead and take a look. That has really intensified within just the last couple of minutes. That's headed kind of in the same direction where we saw a couple of those storm reports, some stronger storms moving through the lower Brule area right now. Let's get a radar estimate on some of that hail right in the middle of that core. Still around 1.5-inch hail. Does look like we just got another updated scan with that. Still leaning towards 1.5-inch for that hail size. So some sizable hail, 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts on the even back end of this initial line moving through there, Tyler.
And right now, Lexi, we're still just keeping our eyes on this area, mainly south and west of Mitchell. The cell that we were watching for most of the evening that's now about to move into Nebraska, at least kind of the core of it. But one thing I'm still kind of concerned about, at least in places like Wagner, and even a little bit further. Yeah, see, there it is right there.
Got it.
It's almost like we called it. New tornado warning in effect until 7:45 for Charles Mix and Gregory County still. It's more so into Charles Mix County, excuse me. But, I was talking about being concerned about in the Wagner area. This storm kind of trying to follow right along, being stubborn. It's kind of the South Dakota-Nebraska border as it's moving along. So the latest velocity scan on that, again, it's going to be kind of not as easy to see. This is a little bit better here, but it's still kind of south and east of the Lake Andes area, right in this vicinity, moving off to the south and east. And that would kind of pair well with why they issued that tornado warning in Nebraska too. Still some kind of embedded rotation in there too. But this is all still part of that same supercell that produced tornadoes earlier on today around places like Dixon.
Yeah, definitely. This storm does have that reputation of really cycling through these, dropping a funnel, and then it moves back up. We did just get, again, that tornado warning in, and not only just for that tornado, we're also looking at this warning including golf ball size hail. That's 1.75 inch for that hail. That did just come in. It does look like we do, yes, that was the latest warning that we did get in from Matt. That is now extended until 7:45.
And the hail is starting to intensify a little bit more too as it's moving through Lake Andes and near and west of the Wagner area for the time being. One of the Doppler radar estimates on that hail size weakening a little bit, but the nature of these storms is that they will kind of what we call pulse up. They'll kind of intensify a little bit and then weaken a little bit. They'll kind of cycle a little while, but while they do start to pulse up a little bit, that's going to result in that large hail forming. And so far we've had reports ranging from golf ball size hail upwards to baseball size hail in some cases with some of the cells earlier on today that have been going on across the region.
Yeah, taking a look at, once again, these warnings, and let's go ahead and zoom out on First Alert Live Doppler radar. You can see, again, very intense line of storms, especially at the southern extent where we do have multiple of those tornado warnings. Yes, they are radar indicated, but that southernmost in portions of Gregory, Charles, Meigs County does have that history of putting tornadoes on the ground. We've seen that cycling multiple times within just the last several hours. Notice even some strong development behind this initial storm. We're seeing some very sizable hail around this severe thunderstorm warning in Buffalo, Hughes, the Lyman County area right now. Taking a look and just kind of reviewing the northern extent of this line, not quite as intense, but we still do have that severe thunderstorm warning. It looks like for portions of Coddington, Grant, and Roberts County until the 7:30 hour. Albin, Milbank, the Ortonville area on the Minnesota side of things, you guys are all in this line of 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts and around quarter-size hail. But even looking at a bigger picture here, Tyler, we are looking at this turning more into a linear mode. You can kind of see that filling up now with more rainfall. And speaking of rainfall, that is potentially going to be leading to some heavy downpour, some flooding issues, just like what we saw around places like the Watertown area from last night's storms.
Rain-wrapped tornado is going to be a big-time threat with some of these tornadoes. A new severe thunderstorm warning, by the way, in effect near and around the Wagner area associated with those tornado warnings. 470-mile-an-hour wind gusts and golf ball size hail. They still have that tornado tag being possible as well within this cell. So you're kind of seeing two different cells right now with regard to what we're looking at in southern South Dakota. One more so staying into Nebraska, one staying in southern South Dakota, about to move into the Wagner area. Well, as we start to kind of put a bow on our traditional 6:30 newscast, we are going to go to break and continue our coverage in just a couple of minutes across our family of networks.
Dakota News Now begins with First Alert Weather.
Weather alert coverage continuing on the Dakota News Now family of stations. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Allen.
Good evening. I'm Kara Setzer. Our First Alert weather coverage is continuing tonight as those severe storms we've been tracking all day have now entered the Sioux Falls area.
And we have a tornado warning not too far away from the Sioux Falls Metro. Tyler Roney begins our coverage here at 9 o'clock. Tyler.
Hey, thank you so much, Brian and Kara. Right now, it's been very active in and around the Sioux Falls area. In particular, we're dealing with some very strong wind gusts, frequent lightning, heavy rain, and even just south of the Sioux Falls area around Lennox, we do have a new tornado warning to tell you about. So let's dive in to our First Alert Live Doppler radar and check out some of the warnings and kind of go through these just a little bit. Tornado warning in southern Lincoln County, portions of Turner County, and northern Union County until 9:30. So this is embedded within this line of storms that is continuing to form and race its way off to the south and east. So Beersford, be in your safe place. Alcester, same thing. This is going to be moving into portions of northwestern Iowa as well. Sioux Center, be on the lookout too. You're officially in that severe thunderstorm warning. We've already been watching some really impressive storms move through places like Yankton and kind of just north of the Vermilion area. But with this particular, this storm right now that's moving through the Sioux Falls area, we've had some very strong wind gusts moving on through. Upwards of 65 to 75 miles an hour have been reported thus far, and it does not take very much to cause damage. There's already been some reports of not only some damage but also some power outages on the northwestern side of the city itself. Let's move a little bit further south now to look at some of that embedded rotation. So this would be just kind of south of the Harrisburg area, more so just south of the Lennox area. This is where we're looking at right here. So this is the concern as far as the radar indicated tornado goes. So it would be just off to the west of I-29 and it's south of the Lennox area. Very strong wind speeds are moving on through. Multiple severe thunderstorm warnings in effect right now too, including portions of Lincoln, Minnehaha, Rock, Sioux counties in northwestern Iowa and southwestern Minnesota until 9:30 for tonight. The airport actually just measured a wind gust of 66 miles an hour at the top of this hour. So, of course, that's on the northwestern edge of town. Already some really impressive wind speeds are moving on through. This warning, by the way, the severe thunderstorm warning still in effect for 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts. We actually have a clip of a kind of a live look right now. This is at 12th Street and Marion, and there have been some really impressive rain showers going on. The wind, it's very wind-driven right now in this vicinity. But we've been noticing this having some major impacts over Sioux Falls so far, especially in the western side of town and getting into the eastern parts of the city now very shortly. Obviously having some power issues with that too, naturally, with that storm moving on through. But kind of here's the broad scope of things again as we look at First Alert Live Doppler radar. We're really just going to be kind of hyper focusing on the Sioux Falls area toward Yankton and getting into northwestern Iowa now, because a lot of the areas further off to the north, those watches have been allowed to expire, like in Watertown and Aberdeen. And as a matter of fact, some more counties have been disappearing from what's left of this severe thunderstorm watch. So here's what we have right now. Severe thunderstorm watch remaining in effect in South Dakota until 10 o'clock for tonight, but in Minnesota and Iowa until 1 o'clock in the morning. We'll show you some live looks right now in the Sioux Falls areas. We kind of watch the storm move in, and this is very reminiscent of what we saw last night. Very frequent lightning. This is persisting right now. We saw this last night occur, some very, very impressive lightning. This is looking from our downtown sky camera right now, thanks to the Avera Sky Camera Network. And this is looking on the southwestern side of town, one of the areas where this storm moved through first, and obviously still producing some very heavy amounts of rainfall and some very vivid lightning. This has been kind of a constant light show with regard to the lightning so far across the region. I'm going to go back to First Alert Live Doppler radar now so we can kind of go back over some of these warnings and tell you about what's going on right now. But right now the concern is still in and around the Sioux Falls area, but also just off to our south in portions of southern Lincoln County, northern Turner County, and northern Union County, as we do have that tornado warning in effect. It is right now radar indicated tornado, and this is very common with these lines of storms that do wind up forming, as you get what's called an embedded rotation within that. So that's what's going on at the moment. I'm going to take a look at another velocity scan here so we can kind of get some better eyes on that. But that is some very impressive signatures here showing up, because this is looking at some very strong wind gusts just east of the Lennox area, 70 miles an hour, Harrisburg right around 56 miles an hour. That's been obviously fluctuating quite a bit, but this has been enough to do some damage and obviously cause some power outages as well. What we're looking at within this tornado warning, which has now actually been trimmed up a little bit more now, so I'm going to go ahead and read some of the updates on that. Still radar indicated, of course, but now this is going to be more so into, let's see if we can get that back up over here for a moment. Here we go. Now this is just for portions of Lincoln and Union counties, as that's been trimmed back just a little bit more. But this is certainly becoming obviously more of a squall line, right kind of the beginning stages of what would become a derecho. But this is 7 miles west of Newton Hill State Park. It's still about 7 miles north of Beersford. It's moving east at 65 miles an hour. So it is booking it. And this is kind of the beginning stages of what we were kind of looking at for a potential long line of storms moving east. And so the bulk of this is forming kind of in our area, kind of around and just south of Sioux Falls. You have on the northern edge of that line still some severe gusts moving through the Sioux Falls region right now. Kind of the core of that is in the eastern part of the city, but you're still dealing with some very strong wind gusts on the western side of Sioux Falls. I'm reading some more about the warnings. The western edge of that warning that does include places like Hartford and Montrose, that's going to be allowed to expire in about 8 minutes or so. And then the focus will be on the cell just off to the south and east of that one. Looking into northwestern Iowa, so this cell right here that does encompass the Lamar's area, Sioux Center, just east of Vermilion, that is for 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts as well. And that's going to be expiring in just 23 minutes, as you see there. That's for that, of course, we're looking at the tornado warning there. But this storm right now, the southern edge, what I'm looking at around the Beersford and Alcester area, this one's moving at about 45 miles an hour. That's going to be moving into Iowa very shortly. So still dealing with some damaging wind gusts with that involved. So let's go ahead and look at now some of the sky cameras once again. We're going to look at the southwestern edge sky camera in Sioux Falls right now. Just some really heavy rainfall and that just very incredible vivid lightning still taking place. Another kind of a crazy light show going on with those strong wind speeds too that have been moving through the region. So very, very impressive so far. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you the downtown sky camera now too, because that one's finally kind of making it into the heart of downtown Sioux Falls. A lot of lightning, very heavy rainfall, strong wind going on. keeping our eyes out for potential power outages. There's already been reports of that on the northwestern edge of the city itself, but this is still very, very impressive so far with this very strong wind gust moving on through. So let's check out that 12th and Marion street camera now. So the rain just blowing across the street, those strong wind gusts taking place. And you can just continue to see the flashes of light in the background as well. Yeah, that kind of almost reminds you of wintertime a little bit, with snow kind of blowing across the roadway with that rainfall. That's some intense wind moving on through right now. So 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts moving through the city of Sioux Falls. That has been confirmed from the Sioux Falls airport. That was a measurement taken at the airport with regard to that. So let's go back to First Alert Live Doppler radar and just do a little analysis here for a moment. Still looking at those severe thunderstorm warnings in Sioux Falls. The eastern edge of that line, which is in the eastern part of Sioux Falls now, is that warning will be expiring at 9:30. So that's when that one will be expiring in the eastern portions of Sioux Falls. This western edge, the one that's in Hartford and Montrose, that expires in just a couple of minutes. Still looking at the potential for an embedded tornado within this line right here. That does include the Beersford area and the Alcester area too. Tornado warning remaining in effect until 9:30. Cities included, I mentioned Alcester and Beersford, but Grant's included in that too. Here's the velocity scan on that, kind of a latest update with regard to what's going on with some of the rotation. And where we're looking right here is where that potential tornado would be north of the Beersford area, right in this vicinity. It's now crossed over Interstate 29, but kind of on I-29, more impressively between Lennox and Beersford. Some very, very intense wind speeds are being recorded, 70 to 80 miles an hour so far. That's right along the interstate too, just kind of taking a couple of samples from radar there as that's making its way through. Let's get another scan in here coming in, but this is moving east pretty quickly. It's been ranging between 40 and upwards of 60 miles an hour. So once these storms form, you know, it's almost one of those, you feel like there's little to no warning with them, but we're giving you plenty of warning as these do continue to race their way off to the south and east. So multiple severe thunderstorm warnings remaining in effect right now, especially in and around Sioux Falls. Yankton, you're getting some heavy rain right now, and a lot of the activity going on to the north and west, not as intense anymore. We're going to be looking at a lot of that weakening as we're going to be seeing more counties ultimately getting dropped, it looks like, from those severe thunderstorm watches that are currently still in effect. But still the target right now is in southeastern South Dakota, right over the Sioux Falls area, and places further off to the south. Still just an isolated chance that there's a tornado embedded within that line, but we're going to continue to potentially see that impacting northwestern Iowa. So I would not be surprised to see that tornado warning get reissued into portions of Sioux County as we get later on into this evening, maybe within this newscast, as a matter of fact. That's when I could see that now. 35 reported outages in the city so far. And we're currently on generator right now as this intense line of storms moves on through. And I just want to highlight this one more time as we look at the latest velocity scan one more time. Oh yeah, we're losing some of our cameras, I see too. But wanted to show you just some of the intense wind speeds right now north of the Canton area. Not all of that is reaching down to the surface. I do want to point that out, but that's pretty close. So some of these reports north of the Canton area, over 80 miles an hour, over 90 miles an hour aloft in our atmosphere. That's trying to mix down to the surface, which would be some just devastating wind gusts as these are starting to eventually make their way into eastern portions of extreme southeastern South Dakota, more so moving into northwestern Iowa. This is kind of the beginning stages of what a derecho looks like, certainly. Even if we start to see this weakening just a little bit more, this is where we're getting those really intense wind speeds moving on through too. Even around the Yankton area still, northeast of the city, still some pretty strong wind speeds behind the main line, over 60 miles an hour. That's still some very strong winds moving on through. Gonna move this over just a little bit. We're gonna go back to radar, center it this way a little bit more, and I'm going to pull up and see if we have any updates to share with you if they've upgraded this warning in southeastern South Dakota. Okay, they did. Now it's for 80 miles an hour for wind gusts. This is the severe thunderstorm warning that's in extreme southeastern South Dakota, right here where I'm highlighting. And that that shows that as we were looking at the velocity scan there, while it was showing values over 90 miles an hour, typically that's looking aloft in our atmosphere, so that part is true, but not all of that reaches the surface. But still, 80 miles an hour is what's going on right now as that's beginning now to form more of that bowing segment. And still, there's some really impressive wind speeds moving through the Sioux Falls area too. The warning is still for 70 mile an hour wind gusts. The western edge of that warning has been allowed to expire now, by the way, that was around Sioux Falls regarding that thunderstorm warning. But we're still looking at 70 mile an hour wind gusts moving on through. The heart of that cell in Sioux Falls is now impacting downtown and the southeastern side of town. Brandon about to be impacted by that too. Harrisburg, you're certainly right in the middle of it right now. That's been certainly a big time impact, but still also keeping our eyes on that embedded rotation that's going on around the Beersford area. And just pointed this out too. We were looking at the Yankton region. They just issued a new severe thunderstorm warning on that, and that is for 60 mile an hour wind gusts. So like we were showing you a few moments ago, still some strong wind gusts moving through the city. Let's see what it looks like in Yankton right now. We'll pull up that sky camera so you can see that. And yeah, looks very eerie in Yankton right now. You're dealing with yet again another very intense storm moving on through. The core of it kind of just off to your north and east, but still some very, very frequent lightning going on right for you. Let's go ahead and check out the downtown sky camera over Sioux Falls again. And of course the camera, it does the thing, it kind of reset itself. So we'll fix that later if we can get back into that. Nonetheless, it is obviously raining very, very hard and the wind is incredibly strong. Still some frequent lightning as we look at the southwestern edge of town, and the rain has come down just a little bit more. We're actually able to see a little bit better. The wind is still an issue, not quite as strong as it was a little bit ago, just because those storms are moving very quickly. And actually, I'm going to pull back and talk about that cell that's in northwestern Iowa, because I have a feeling that when they updated that tag on it, that it is moving through even faster now. Let's get some of the details on that. It is moving off to, let's see. Well, first things first, in Irene, an 87 mile an hour wind gust was reported. So we have that confirmed. In Irene, 87 mile an hour wind gust has been reported. And so keep an eye in places like Sioux Center, Iowa, even Rock Rapids. Just keep that in mind. These storms are moving into your area and they have a history of producing some very strong wind gusts. The hail is not so much of an issue right now with these storms moving on through. It's for nickel size hail. Obviously it could still cause some damage, but the wind is the bigger concern right now. So this is going to be moving into Sioux Center here very shortly, as this is moving between 50 and 60 miles an hour. It is in Beersford, it's going to be in Worthing, and like we said, we have already had confirmed reports of wind gusts over 80 miles an hour, approaching 90 just around the Irene area. So very, very impressive. Let's go back to the velocity scan, and again, this is not what you want to see at all. This has now crossed I-29, some of the more intense wind speeds going on. And so I'm going to zoom in just a little bit around Sioux Falls, because really a bulk of the wind in Sioux Falls is going to be contained to the southeastern side of town at the moment. But you look around the Canton area and between kind of Harrisburg and Canton, you're dealing with some very, very strong wind gusts right now. Latest reading kind of north of Canton, still trying to approach 90 to 100 miles an hour. So while that might not be a true reading down at the surface, it's going to be pretty close. So that's going to be something very, very careful.
Hey, Tyler.
Yes, sir.
Real quick, you mentioned Canton.
Yes.
I'm watching a live storm chaser feed. He is in Canton. He can't go anywhere. He has a camera showing a live feed. It looks like he's stuck in a hurricane.
Just with that kind of intense wind.
With the intense wind and the rain that's falling and the way that it's falling, you add in the lightning as well. It's very difficult to tell what this, if you didn't know his situation,
sure,
you wouldn't be able to tell what's going on. But he is in Canton right now, and the rain is just enveloping him. The wind is coming at him, and it looks like he's just wrapping the rain around the car. He can't go anywhere right now.
And that's something too, you know, if you're thinking about heading out or you have to go to work soon or anything like that, I mean, you just have to wait these kind of storms out. I mean, there's just no way that you can go anywhere with this. And, you know, as a matter of fact, I was just going to show you guys how this has intensified. This is the velocity scan right now, but look at the last hour. It didn't take very long for that to really intensify and start to form that bowing segment, which is extending all the way south, just east of the Vermilion area right now too. So just some very, very intense wind speeds are moving through right now, the southeastern portions of South Dakota. Everything kind of started around the Sioux Falls area and now is still moving into portions of northwestern Iowa very, very slowly. So okay, we have a live shot of 26 in the southeastern in Sioux Falls. Let's go ahead and get a look at that. I mean, look at that. I mean, that is some very, it looks like, again, it looks like snow. I keep calling attention to that because it just looks like that wind-driven snow that we're used to around here in the wintertime. And that is some very, very intense wind moving on through right now. And that's just on the southeastern side of Sioux Falls. I mean, you talk about what we're dealing with around places like Canton and Beersford. Some very, very, very strong winds are moving on through. And so far as we're looking at this footage right now, it is good to know that we have power. We've had some reports of some damage across portions of the city. Some fences down in some areas. I saw some reports on 41st Street. Marion and 26 on the west side of Sioux Falls, multiple trees down have been reported. Marion and 26, 41st, west side of Sioux Falls. So unfortunately, you know, this is something that we're going to be seeing becoming a big time issue as many wake up tomorrow morning and start to kind of think about cleaning up and stuff, because we're going to have a lot of tree damage, a lot of, unfortunately, property damage too. You don't want to see that, but that's what looks like is happening with these kind of wind speeds. So as we look a little bit northeast of the Alcester area, still some of those wind speeds aloft, anywhere from 70 to 80 miles an hour, still around Canton, approaching and exceeding 80 miles an hour. Those winds are moving through very quickly. So I'm going to go back to First Alert Live Doppler radar. Still a tornado warning for portions of Lincoln and Union County until 9:30. This has just been Doppler radar indicated thus far, but this continues to make its way off to the south and east pretty quickly, and this is where we're starting to see this transitioning into more of that bowing segment. So I'm going to zoom out and kind of show you what this looks like too, because we're going to see this kind of forming a little bit of a line like this, and then this is what I'm seeing happening throughout tonight, racing into portions of northwestern Iowa, trying to clip parts of southwestern Minnesota too. But really, my concern right now would be in northwestern Iowa over the next few hours or so. So we're going to just reset for a moment, look at, just go back to the broad view here, First Alert Live Doppler radar. We are in the clear for those of you watching in the northern portions of the area, even around Winter and Valentine. We are in the clear now. We're not going to have to worry about severe weather for tonight, but we're still going to be really focusing on the southeastern parts of the region as those strong storms continue to make their way through. And by the way, as we look at, I'm going to show you the latest watch update on that, still until 10 o'clock in the southeastern parts of the region and until 1 a.m. in Minnesota and Iowa. They've actually even canceled some more areas in this region too, so that's good news. I'm going to show you also what the rest of the evening looks like, because we only have really kind of a couple more hours to deal with these. Then they're going to be out of here very quickly. Trying to show by 1 a.m. a few lingering storms popped up. Those won't be a big deal. What is a big deal, obviously, is what's moving on through right now. So back to First Alert Live Doppler radar. In a current view we go. Still looking out for that embedded tornado warning until 9:30. Still looking at just radar indicated for the time being. This is continuing to make its way off to the south and east. It's no confirmed tornado with this, but obviously in a situation like this, there's always going to be that chance for some embedded rotation. And we've obviously seen some very intense wind speeds just south and east of the Sioux Falls area toward Canton and toward Beersford, kind of right in this area is where the most intense wind speeds are. And obviously it didn't take much wind to cause damage. We had some damage in Sioux Falls last night with 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Unfortunately, that's the case again for tonight as those wind speeds continue to make their way through. I'm going to look at the latest velocity scans again, and now kind of the nose, if you will, of this line of storms are making its way into northwestern Iowa. So looking into kind of Sioux County in particular, this is where we're going to start to see those really strong wind gusts make their way on by as the night goes on. And I'm not forgetting about you around the Yankton area as well. Still a very strong storm moving on through. Here's what that looks like for you on our Yankton sky camera. You're also dealing with some very frequent lightning, and there was actually some really impressive views of these storms moving on through earlier on tonight. Just very, very vivid cloud to cloud type lightning going on with these storms tonight. This is the view in Yankton, of course, but here's what it looks like in Sioux Falls again, southwestern side of town. A lot of lightning, things calming down a little bit more with regard to the wind now, at least on the western side of Sioux Falls, but it's still some pretty strong wind speeds are being reported in eastern Sioux Falls. Not quite like what we're seeing around the Beersford and Canton areas, but still, you know, you don't want to mess with any strong wind speeds at this point, and anything 60 miles an hour or greater are considered severe. So back to First Alert Live Doppler radar we go. We're going to look and see we have a new warning that's been issued, a new severe thunderstorm warning, big time area, and this is now what they call an extremely dangerous situation with this severe thunderstorm warning. I'm going to try to get the coordinates on that. There we go. This is in effect until 10 o'clock. This is for 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts moving on through. And this is going to be impacting a good majority, pretty much all of our northwestern Iowa counties in our Dakota News Now coverage area as this makes its way in. So Lamar's, Orange City, Sioux Center, Sheldon, Sibley, Rock Rapids, you know, even later on tonight, potentially the Spirit Lake and Spencer areas need to be on the lookout too. So these storms, very, very strong, 80 miles an hour for wind gusts. These are what they call extremely dangerous situation, severe thunderstorm warnings moving on through. And with that in mind, you can't ever rule out the chance of an isolated tornado to be possible too. But right now, the big focus is on the wind speeds. And yes, we still do have officially that tornado warning that remains in effect until 9:30 for this evening. It'll be expiring here in just a couple of minutes. Looking now at the latest velocity scan, this does a really good job to help us see where the strongest wind speeds are. And now kind of, let's let that latest scan kind of show in and just how quickly that moved on in. I mean, this storm is moving very, very fast. Just west of the Sioux Center area, 97 miles an hour possible. Again, that's a loft. I'm not saying that's reaching the surface, but it's going to be close. So 80 to 90 miles an hour for wind gusts already just west of the Sioux Center area are about to move through. That's why this is an extremely dangerous situation, severe thunderstorm warning. So if you are in any of these warning boxes right now, I highly recommend just seeking shelter because this is some very strong wind moving on through. You don't want to be near windows. This is going to be, you know, that can be easily destroyed with wind speeds like this. These are the warnings of interest right now. The strongest wind, you know, just to go back to Sioux Falls for a moment, has already made its way through the city. Things are calming down a little bit more in Sioux Falls. Yes, it's still a little windy, but not as bad as it was a few moments ago. And we're still looking out for those warnings just east of the Sioux Falls area. The Sioux Falls area itself not officially under that severe thunderstorm warning anymore. Portions of Brandon still technically under that, but most of the city of Sioux Falls now beginning to wind down for the night with regard to that. I'm going to look at a quick little update on that storm that's east of Sioux Falls just to see if they change any of the wording on that. That's going to be, they're probably, what the Weather Service is doing, to give you guys kind of an idea, this warning box right here is going to be expiring in just a couple of minutes, and it's going to be transitioning into more of this warning box that remains in effect until 10 o'clock because it's all going to be merging into this line that's going to be moving on through. So that's what's going on with that current storm right now. Just one more look at that velocity scan. Very intense wind speeds are moving through portions of extreme eastern South Dakota and western portions of northwestern Iowa. So we're going to reset things a little bit now. We are going to send you back to programming on all the other channels, but we are going to continue Dakota News Now on Fox Sioux Falls here in just a couple of minutes. So stick around.